At another event, this one on April 14, 2000, about 1,200 people attended a testimonial and roasted Sandusky at the Bryce Jordan Center. Joe Paterno made a very brief appearance, saying he had to leave early because of a prior commitment. Paterno said Sandusky was what Penn State is all about.
Am I sexually attracted to underage boys?
It became clear to Leiter that Sandusky had formulated a consistent game plan, just as he had done as the coach for 32 years on the Penn State football staff. Leiter kept private the stories from others involved in the second mile when he conducted his interviews, making sure not to taint the case by tipping anyone off. He was the first investigator to lead a probe of Sandusky's behavior who was not affiliated with Penn State. He had no allegiance to the university or the former defensive mastermind. By late 2010, Leiter had gathered a remarkable number of accounts with similar modus operandi from young men who claimed Sandusky had forced himself on them sexually. According to these accounts, Sandusky, while projecting a saintly image to the public, was preying on the vulnerabilities of those assigned to his care. Few of them had male role models in their lives, so all of them had been elated when a man of Sandusky's stature had shown interest in them. He was a famous football coach and humanitarian who invited them into a world they had no access to before. They had the chance to meet real football players, associate with legends like Joe Paterno, and be in the mix of big-time college football. The family members of the accusers had been fooled as well. Many were single parents grateful that a man like Jerry Sandusky was helping their child, making them less likely to see the affectionate attention negatively. Leiter's investigation revealed that Sandusky had carefully observed the young men for as long as 2 years before he made his move. According to Leiter, he would seek targets with no adult male figures in their lives. He would lavish them with gifts and words of love and affection like they had never experienced before. He had them believing he genuinely cared for them and that they were special. Eventually, he would encourage them to join him in one-on-one workouts and other activities where they could be alone. In almost every instance, Leiter's investigation indicated, Sandusky would test them to gauge a response. If he could get away with rubbing their leg in his car on the way to an event, he would push the boundaries further. If the young men objected to the touching, Leiter reasoned, they would not get any personal attention from him again, sexual or otherwise. Those who didn't protest against the advances would remain in his good graces, some for as long as 4 years. And they were all afraid to tell anyone about what was going on, even their closest friends.
Am I sexually attracted to underage boys?
Despite Sandusky's promises 2 years earlier to never shower with children again, detectives would learn of another unreported allegation against Sandusky in the Lash Building shower. Penn State janitorial staff who worked there told them they witnessed what appeared to be the assault of a young child by Sandusky in a shower. It was on a Friday night after Penn State's football team had gone on the road for an away game. Sandusky may have believed the facility would be empty because virtually everyone associated with Penn State football traveled with the team. He apparently didn't realize janitors were still on duty. Shortly after Sandusky got there, a janitor named Jim Calhoun heard a noise in the showers of the Lash Building. He found a naked Sandusky with a boy who appeared to be no more than 13 years old, pinned against the wall. Shocked, Calhoun immediately went to look for his co-worker, Ronald Petrosky. Before he could find him, Petrosky arrived. Under the partition he could see 2 sets of feet, one of an adult, another of a child. He waited for a few minutes for them to finish showering. Then Sandusky, a man he recognized, walked out hand in hand with a young child. Both were carrying gym bags and had wet hair. He said Sandusky acknowledged him with a good evening. A few minutes later, Calhoun finally found Petrosky and told him he had seen Sandusky naked in the shower, holding the boy up against the wall and licking him. Calhoun had fought in the Korean War and had seen people with their guts blown out, arms dismembered. Now he told Petrosky, I just witnessed something in there I'll never forget. He also said he watched Sandusky perform oral sex on the child. Paterno said Sandusky was what Penn State is all about.
It's the hard knock life. the cows. Gus T Renegade and Justice in for another program, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of racism, white supremacy. Thank you everybody for tuning into the broadcast. I hope it will be a constructive investment of your Wednesday afternoon. Today's date, July 11th, 2012. So I have been told. We are broadcasting a little earlier than normal because of the time difference. Our guest joining us live from the UK. Obviously, we have to be on a little bit earlier if we're going to get folks from different parts of the world. But I'm always excited to have people on from different parts of the globe. I think it really helps to give a much better understanding of the world we live in, which, again, I have unfortunately concluded is dominated by racism. You can see some of our UK callers dialed in already. Good to see them as well. This month, we are really spending a lot of time focused on sexual abuse, particularly child molestation. I think this is an extremely important topic. The sound clip that you heard in the beginning from the audiobook Game Over on the Jerry Sandusky Penn State sex abuse case. Jerry Sandusky, just convicted, will most likely be in jail for the rest of his life for sexually abusing untold numbers of children, a significant number of them black. Really important issue, something I don't think enough people spend time addressing. I don't think enough of us really understand the amount of damage that young children suffer and carry with for the rest of their life as a result of sexual trauma. I know a lot of our listeners have called in to share their own experiences. If you're listening and you want to dial in to ask questions, definitely welcome that. Any of the programs that we're doing that are dealing with sexual abuse, we encourage and commend any of our listening audience, folks that are willing to call in to share their own experiences or ask questions and what have you. I think that's extremely important. I know a lot of people out there who are listening have dealt with these issues, are dealing with these issues, and I think it means a lot to them when they can hear other folks who have the courage to step forward and speak truthfully about what they've experienced and what they have done to heal from that trauma. That said, our guest for today's program, this is another recommendation, and again, it's just us appreciating the fantastic work of Sylvia Coleman. She was with us at the beginning of the month talking about this same issue. You can visit her website, blacksurvivors.org. blacksurvivors.org. Fantastic website. She has a ton of just phenomenal information for black victims of child molestation and sexual abuse. She's got websites, books, hotline numbers, and it's got a forum where you can post questions and talk to some of the other members. Just phenomenal information. One of the resources that she had on her website, the book Racism and Child Protection, The Black Experience of Child Sexual Abuse. I contacted the author, and she was willing to spend some of her time to discuss this most important issue with us. I will read you a little bit from the preface just to kind of give you an idea of what the book is all about and why this is such an important topic to cover. She writes, "Racist practice still exists in Britain. Lack of knowledge is apparent, and awareness of racial groups and their cultures is low within child care professions, placing any child from a minority ethnic group in a disadvantaged position. There are additional barriers which prevent a child from a non-white background disclosing abuse, particularly if the abuse is sexual. There appears to be a hidden agenda which Black and Asian people are encouraged to accept and collude with that perpetuates the limits placed on them by racism. A Black or Asian adult who is found guilty of abusing a child takes responsibility for the whole of their race." Really important information. I'm glad we're having the opportunity to have her visiting with us on the program. Again, she is joining us live from the United Kingdom. She is the Chief Consultant and Director of the Valerie Jackson Consultancy. You can visit her website, valeriejacksonconsultancy.co.uk. The address again is valeriejacksonconsultancy.co.uk. Super appreciative of having her on the program. Joining us live, our guest, Miss Valerie Jackson. Miss Jackson, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Outstanding. Thank you again for sharing some of your, I guess for you, Wednesday evening with us. Really thankful to have you on the program. For our listeners, this might be their first time hearing from you, hearing about your book. Could you give us some more background information just so we have a better idea of who you are?
Okay. I think, first of all, it's important to say that I'm white. So I haven't come across this from a black perspective, and I don't pretend to understand from a black person's point of view. My qualifications are that I'm a child therapist and psychologist, and I'm also a trainer of people who want to work with children. And that was my sort of perspective when I came into looking particularly at child sexual abuse. In my work as a child therapist, I've worked with many survivors of child sexual abuse, but I didn't get any children or surviving adults from black or minority backgrounds, and I wondered why. And when I discussed with other colleagues if they had any clients from that particular type of background, they also said that there seemed to be a lack of survivors coming forward. And the only conclusion I could come to initially was that somewhere in there, either something was preventing them from coming forward and speaking out, or they were being supported within their own communities. And that was the reason why I wrote the book, to try to discover what was happening to all these people. Why weren't they being supported? What were we doing in my country, which is Britain, to help these people, because they are an important part of our community. They're not a minority. They're visible. They're evident to what was happening to them. So that was how I came to write the book.
Did you, before we get into your work, did you find that black victims of childhood sexual molestation, that they were being supported by their own community?
No, I didn't. And it was very difficult to write this book. Bear in mind, this book has been written a long time, and I think it says a lot that in my country, this book hasn't done very well. It's not something that people in Britain really want to recognise. I still feel that we have this inherent racism that we can't overcome, because with that we have fear. We're frightened of saying the wrong thing. I'm saying we in the general sense, but there is a fear of interfering. If I can give you an example, not long ago we had a little girl who'd come over from Africa with her aunt and a step-uncle, and her name was Victoria Colombier. And that child came through France to get to England. In England, she stayed in 12 different places where there were concerns expressed about the way she was being cared for and the way that her aunt was behaving. At no time did anyone rescue that child. And the only reason that child came to the attention of the public was that she was found wrapped in a plastic refuse bag in a bath, starved to death with severe injuries all over her body. And when there was an inquiry as to why this child had been allowed to die, and that's the only way we can describe it, it appears that either the fear of being accused of being racist prevented those professionals who should have protected that child from saying something in case they were accused of being against black people, or they sent in somebody who was black but from a totally different background and culture. Again, it's the assumption made that if you have a similar skin colour, you understand what's going on. And I just felt that was appalling. That case has made a big difference to the legislation in this country, I must say. But it has taken the death of a child to bring that about.
Wow. What is that child's name again?
Victoria Columbier.
Wow.
She was from one of the African countries.
Wow.
And we know that it is very common and very usual for parents where they have a large family, and whether it's an African parent or sometimes even Irish parents or English parents, if a kindly relative will say, look, I can give your child a little bit more than you can. I understand that you don't have a lot of money, and I will care for your child. You know, we know that that happens. So the parents trusted this woman to take their precious child, bring her to a foreign country to give her what they thought was a better education and a better quality of life. And this is what happened to her. And we did have the problem with this particular family that it was all mixed up with religion. And because it was a predominantly black religion, again, people stepped back and said, we can't interfere. This is how this works in this particular church. It's not true. Child abuse is child abuse.
Wow.
You see, I get passionate about it, Gus. I'm sorry.
It's an important issue. I wish more people had that same energy to get out and be actively involved in protecting children, especially black children, in a world dominated by racism. So, yeah, I think it's warranted. Before we proceed with getting into your book and what it's about, you've already stated you are a white woman, correct?
Yes.
Okay. This program, the C.O.W.S, Context of White Supremacy, I have unfortunately concluded that the world in which we live is dominated by a system of racism, white supremacy. I use those two terms as synonyms, and I use the same definition for both terms, racism and white supremacy. The definition that I use is as follows: a global system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white. Do you believe that such a system exists, and do you think that's an accurate definition?
Yes, I do, and I probably would take it a step further and say that this world is a white man's world until we change it.
A white man's world.
Yes.
White women are not equally complicit in the system of white supremacy?
I think we're getting there, if that's an awful statement, but I still feel it is the white men rather than the white women who make the laws that govern this and allow the perpetuation of racism and supremacy. We still are not equal. I don't want to be equal in that way, that's not what I'm saying, but we still, we follow, I think, as females, we follow rather than lead. And that's a shame.
Okay. Wow, very interesting. I know for our listeners, I would say that my view consistently has been white women, non-white people tend not to be suspicious of white women, and I have found that ends up leading to a lot of problems. I've said consistently, the army of racism, white supremacy, white man, white woman. The system would not be functioning if you did not have equal complicit acts on the part of white women. So I would just encourage non-white listeners, do not take that white woman for granted.
Oh, absolutely not. I think women, and I would include myself in that, although sometimes we can't see what we're like because we're so close to ourselves, is that women have a different way of becoming racist, and I think in a way women are more devious. So I think often we can do it in a hidden way.
Wow. I have heard that before from several white women. Some white women who've come on this program have said that exactly. I remember Farrah Winfrey, she said that she felt that her own mother was a lot more dangerous than her father, because her father was overtly racist. He would call black people niggers and make all sorts of blatant and crude comments about black people. She said that her mom wouldn't do that, but her mom was equally racist. She was just much more clever at being able to conceal her racist attitudes and behaviors. How have you seen white women be more deceptive in their ability to practice racism?
I think particularly in childcare, if we take the example of young children, I'm talking about what we would call kindergarten age. If you have children where they have to have their skin oiled, particularly black children have to have their skin oiled, they have to have their hair treated differently to the way that European hair is treated, then often women who are supposed to be professional carers, and it is still a predominantly female profession, will avoid having to touch the skin of children who are not white, or they will claim to have favourites who are not of any other ethnicity other than white, and sometimes white blonde, to make it really difficult. And they can do that because they claim that those children are more giving. Part of my work is to visit these daycare establishments, so I see it firsthand. And actually, the women who are doing this don't even realise this is what they're doing because it's so embedded in their behaviour.
Wow. Racism, white supremacy, the default setting worldwide. Remind our listeners, our guest, she's joining us live from the UK. So if you're listening anywhere else, Canada, the States, Japan, wherever else, and you can relate to any of this, that would further evidence what I'm saying about a global system. All right. Well, I guess, I would have to ask, being that in your book you talk about being a white, and you said you wouldn't exclude yourself from this. You are a white woman, your own complicit act in all of this. I would ask, as much honesty as we can bear, are you a racist, white supremacist? And the definition that I use, again, those two are synonyms. Definition that I use, racist, white supremacist, a white person who directly and or indirectly, consciously and or unconsciously mistreats someone because they are not white. By that definition, are you a racist, white supremacist?
I think I have worked on all the conscious racism that I can. I think the difficulty for anything like this is I have to remain open-minded about myself, and I have to acknowledge that there will probably have been occasions or situations, and whilst I can't recall any, where I have not known how racist I have been. So it's about not knowing what you don't know, if that makes sense. I need other people, and this is what I find about anything to do with discrimination and racism. You cannot be better by yourself. You have to rely on other people to inform you when you're getting it wrong or when it's inappropriate. So whenever I've run courses on anti-discrimination, I always make a point of saying to everybody, I can be equally as discriminating or racist as anyone else. I just don't see it anymore. You have to point it out to me. And I think the only thing in my favour is that I'm willing to be that open. So if I'm found to be racist or discriminatory, I hope that I would take it on board.
Okay. I didn't, again, as much honesty as we can bear. I think that is very important for non-white people to get honest, accurate information with just being efficient as possible with words. So according to the definition that I gave, conscious and or unconscious, direct and or indirect, would it be accurate to say yes, you are still a racist by that definition?
I probably still am, yes.
Okay. So given that, I would still have to come back and ask, even though you kind of gave a brief explanation at the beginning about the purpose of this book, because I had these thoughts when you emailed me. I didn't know that you were a white woman at first. I just, from the website, I looked at it was a black female, and I thought she was recommending other black people. And you said, well, I do want you to know, Gus, that I'm a white woman.
Yeah.
Why on earth would a white woman, a racist white woman, why on earth would a white woman have any concern with black children who are being sexually abused?
Because even though I may still be a racist white woman, I fight very hard to overcome inequality. And for me, this is the biggest inequality that I can fight against.
Okay. Right on. Context of White Supremacy. I appreciate the honesty. As I was telling Miss Jackson before the program began, given that she said she is a racist, which is, not surprising for me. Appreciate the honesty. I was reading the book with a high level of scrutiny, and I was pretty impressed. I think there's a lot of good information in the book, and hopefully that'll come out as we go. I'm going to try to read a little bit as we go and get her response. This book was published in 1996. That's also kind of sad that this is still extremely relevant. It could have been published yesterday. Very up to date in terms of the information and its value in 2012. You start off the book, page 3, with definitions, and to me that right there is extremely significant. Writing a book on racism and beginning with definitions, you define black culture, ethnicity, minority group, nationalism. I did not see white get defined, and I think that's very significant. Why is it that you didn't define what it means to be a white person?
That's a very interesting question. I imagine... It is a long time since I wrote the book, so forgive me a little. I think it's because I was writing about where there was discrimination, and wherever I've travelled in the world, and I've travelled to a number of countries, I can't recall a time when as a white person I've been discriminated against. And so the assumption, particularly in this country, is that if you're not black or Asian, you are white. That's all there is to it. You are white. So I suppose I just made the assumption that that's what I was working towards. Politically, you're either black or you're white in this country, in my country.
That is interesting. For our listeners, I would say that goes back to my my rhetorical question where I ask non-white people to ponder on what does it mean to be a white person. I have my own views about that. I would say I've seen this consistently where people don't really explain what it means to be a white person, and I think that is immensely important. Maybe even criminal in some instances. I think it's done purposely. I'm not saying that's the case here, but I definitely think it needs to be thought about. What does it mean to be a white person, and why are so many white people reluctant to give an explanation as to what that means? But anywho, you do define racism, and you already touched on it. You just said as a white person, you've done traveling all over the world, and you can't think of times where you have been discriminated against. You give your definition of racism, and I'm reading, this is on page 3. You say, the belief by white people that they are infinitely superior to black people in all aspects of culture, religion, intellect, beliefs, lifestyle, parenting skills, language, and so on. This belief was upheld in historical, factual accounts by white male scientists or philosophers who supported their arguments by referring to Christian teachings and included among their numbers Charles Darwin and David Hume. Page 3, you go on to give some of the charts and what have you. And I felt that was incredibly important. Your definition of racism, it seems to suggest that only white people are racist, that black people are not racist. Is that accurate?
I think black people can be prejudiced. I think it'd be very difficult for a black person to be racist. I know nowadays people can feel that they're okay to accuse a black person of being racist, but actually the power lies with the white people. And racism is about power, in my opinion. And so what my chart shows is that as far as people like Charles Darwin were concerned, the blacker your skin, the closer to apes you were, the whiter your skin, the closer to God you were.
I unfortunately think that is still the case. I have been seeing quite a bit of that myself, where I guess it's in vogue to accuse black people and or non-white people of being racist, and I don't think that is possible. In fact, we just had a white person on the program 2 days ago who was saying that he thinks black people can practice racism, but he couldn't think of any examples of a black person practicing racism, and he, as also a white person, said he couldn't think of any examples of where someone practiced racism against him. Real important. I hope folks who listen to the program have that very clear. You cannot practice racism if you are a black person or a non-white person. I could be wrong, but I don't think so.
I think you can be extremely prejudiced. I think you can discriminate, but you haven't got the power, and really you haven't got the law of your land to back that up. So you can't be racist, again, in my opinion as well, linking with you. Unless you're white, you can't be racist.
Real important point. This is the same chapter where you give your definitions at the beginning of the book. Racist clouds, first chapter of the book. You go into more detail about the connection between racism and child abuse, and I just want to read a little bit. I thought this was important as well. This is on bottom of page 4, going over to page 5. A black child who recognizes that what is happening to him or her is called abuse is faced with a dilemma. Such children have the trauma of the actual abuse, which will have affected their self-image as a child, how they view their gender, and their self-worth, compounded with whatever effect racism has on them as individuals. They may, for example, be disinclined to ask for help, particularly if the abuser was also black. In an attempt to prevent the white professionals and population from assuming that all black adults abuse black children and it is their own fault. In Melba Wilson's book, Crossing the Boundary, she quotes examples of high-ranking American scholars who insisted that racism was not damaging black communities and perpetuating child abuse, but that it was black women who caused it by not allowing their men to be dominant over them and their children. Real important point about how this can be manifested to do just a terrible psychological damage to black children. Could you share a little bit more on that?
Well, I think in a way it's a way of victimizing the victim, and I think in whatever country we live, we're all very good at doing that, because by victimizing the victim, you have less to do. And I think that's why priests in the church have been protected by their congregations, by their communities, when they've carried out horrific sexual abuse against the children that they were supposed to be supporting, because it's easier to turn away. It's easier to blame the mothers who are raising their children by themselves. It's your fault. You haven't got a man who will sort these children out. You haven't got somebody who tells you what to do. So in a way, I think that this unequal world that we live in still perpetuates victimization in this way.
I couldn't agree more, unfortunately. This is continuing, just next paragraph where I stopped at, this page 5. If black children have been abused by a white person, they may assume, again, that this is all they are worth. And who would believe them anyway? Haven't they been given plenty of information about their low status? You go on, this is a quote. Children from ethnic minorities also can assume that their sexual abuse will not be taken seriously. If they are treated as if they don't matter, then why should their abuse matter? As J. Edgar Hoover, former and long-term head of the FBI, said, "Some nigger bitch gets herself raped." Direct quote. If they could be sold and murdered, why not raped? Back to Miss Jackson's writing. Even if such children were to seek help, what could they expect? Have the supporting services thought deeply enough about how to offer support to a black child? Very important point, I think, for a lot of black people. They can relate to, older black people can relate to not being believed, having their credibility questioned, people saying that you don't really know what you're talking about. I don't think enough black people think about how that is going to work on a child level if they have been the victim of some sort of sexual abuse, where that same racist white supremacist dynamic is at work, where they might be thinking, man, I see black people get abused and mistreated all the time. Look at the way they treat President Obama. How are they going to treat me if I try to come out and say that I was abused by a white person or a black person? Can you share on that as well?
Well, I think it's like anything else. When I look at what happens in my country, and if I look at adults, forget about children who've been sexually abused. If I look at adults, the highest population in mental hospitals that are attached to prisons is black. And there is an expectation that when a black man shows any emotion, that they are mentally ill. And therefore, as soon as they fight against an arrest or whatever, they are handcuffed and they are often carted off to a mental health institution rather than straight to a prison. And again, we have this, we being white, if I just keep saying that, we have this fear, this inbuilt fear that because we have been racist for so many generations, if we allow people who are black, people who are Asian, people who are brown to have the same equality and the same power as us, then they will do to us what we have been doing to them for hundreds of years. And I think that's the crux of the matter. So we cannot believe a black child if they tell us that they have been abused, because we don't know what to do about it. It's easier to say, you're wrong.
Do you think for white people, because of racist white supremacist attitudes, that black life is not really valued anyway? So J. Edgar Hoover's words, black person gets raped, so what? That it's just not that big a concern anyway. So even if you did get raped, I'm just not as motivated, to do anything about that. I don't really see that as something that I should be very excited about, very passionate about correcting.
Yeah, yes, I think that's the one of the important things. Don't forget that Britain was an empire. We owned countries. We conquered countries. Despite us being a very small country, we had a huge empire, and the majority of the peoples within those empires were black. So therefore, we have had supremacy over black peoples for years and years and years, and therefore the assumption that we have that we are superior has been borne out by this. We conquered countries. That's what Britain did. Now we have very few because, we're where we should be. We're a very small country. We don't have the power. But it doesn't stop the assumption being that if you're black, you're not as valuable as if you're white. And I think it still is there. I think we have institutional racism that allows that to still be there.
That the system of white supremacy, I unfortunately would totally agree. Wow. There was a sentence before I proceed. I wanted to make sure I didn't forget this. This is in the preface, the last page of the preface, last paragraph in the preface, where you say, for as long as power remains high on the agenda of human communication, there will be sexual abuse and rape. I was just hoping you could kind of elaborate and further explain that sentence.
I think it's because rape is an expression of power. and it is a way of making the victim fearful. It is the worst thing you could do. It is dehumanizing, it is humiliating, it is painful, it has got nothing to do with sex. And I believe that's the case for sexual abuse. That is the way you show your power over an individual. So as long as power is one of the high agenda issues, when we strive, most of us, I think, strive for a world of equality, we are not ever going to be equal to one another, because that is not what human beings do. We always want to be more powerful than. And if you think about if I think about in my country, all the people who came over to plunder, it was rape and pillage. That's what you do. If you look at some of the troubles in the Eastern European countries or the African countries, the first thing you do is you rape the women. It's a power struggle. It will always be there. And that's the sad thing about it.
Wow. I had two thoughts there. Just flushing that out for listeners. So you think as long as you have people who are primarily concerned with power, and power defined as domination, control over another group of people, rape is going to be a key element of how they go about securing that power?
I think it's certainly one of the major aspects, yes.
Wow. Very important. Very important. Okay, and the second, when you were explaining, I'm so glad I asked about that, because I thought that was a real important sentence. When you were giving that explanation, and you said that you think most people in general are concerned with equality. I'm paraphrasing, but that was the gist of it. Now, this is when you said being open to feedback as a white woman who is still racist white supremacist. Yeah. In my view, a white person making that statement, that is you consciously and or unconsciously practicing racism, because I don't think you can honestly say, looking at the record of white people's conduct, that white people in general are concerned with equality. Now, I mean, am I being truthful?
That's something I will take on board. Thank you for saying that to me.
Okay, am I being truthful?
I think you may be. I haven't thought about it. I have to process that. But yes, I think it's. I never know if I'm coming at this from a feminist perspective, or whether I'm coming at it from someone who wants everybody to be equal. But I will take that on board, and I will process that.
Okay, I would throw that same question out to our listeners, just being truthful. I don't think anyone, if you really look at the record of white people worldwide, South Africa, Japan, Great Britain, United States, Canada, I think if you look at their record, I think you're going to have a tough time concluding that white people in general are concerned with equality, justice. Tough to prove. Okie doke. On page 6 and 7, this is still chapter 1, Racist Clouds, bottom of page 6, where you write, this is a quote: "If a white child is removed from his or her family because of sexual abuse, that child can attempt to start life again somewhere else. The culture of that somewhere else will be very similar to what they left behind, but that wouldn't be noticed. The culture itself wouldn't trigger past unpleasant memories of abuse. But if a child is part of a despised community, that community is like an oasis in the desert. Its sights, sounds, and aromas make it unique and therefore identifiable to the child and everyone else. If that culture is associated through memory or through internalized oppression with abuse and cannot be separated out, then every time the child touches that safe place, pain will be felt. There will be no safe place. When through no fault of their own, children are alienated from their own cultural environment, they experience severe psychological damage which may never be repaired. Racism seeps into black children's lives so insidiously that for many, they don't even realize it is there, and they take upon themselves the responsibility for being so different." This is a quote again. Child sexual abuse is the misuse of power by an individual, usually male, against a child. Whether the child is black or white, it does harm. If the child is black, however, it does particular harm because of the added dimension of race. When a white child is sexually abused, they think they are bad and dirty. When a black child, especially a girl child, is abused, she thinks she is bad, dirty, and an affront to the race, both in sexual terms and in terms of being black and female. She thinks, too, of the message it will send to white society if she tells. Real important section. Can you touch on how that, if a black child in particular is a victim of sexual trauma, how that can be internalized to themselves and compounded because of racism, and it can be overgeneralized to all black people are bad?
If I give you a sort of a brief example, if a black child has been found to have suffered sexual abuse and is removed from that unsafe environment to a place of safety, invariably where they go will be predominantly governed by white people. We don't have enough black carers or black foster carers in particular to support the black child who has suffered abuse. So therefore, if you've been taken out of your culture, out of, like I said, the smells, the sounds, all those familiar things, and you're placed into what in effect becomes an alien world, that must just confirm to the child that where they were, although it felt safe, will always be the bad place. Because one thing that a child is always told when they're removed for their own safety is, you will be safe here. It will not happen to you as long as you are here. Which isn't always true, I might add. Sometimes it does happen to the child in the place of safety, and that adds another dimension to them. So what I've discovered by reading a lot of information from black authors as well as white authors is that a child of colour, a black child or an Asian child, already has been given responsibility for their race. This doesn't happen to white children. So therefore, if somebody black does something wrong, all black people have to feel guilty for that one misdoing.
Wow. Context of White Supremacy. Again, our guest, Miss Valerie Jackson, just again quoting this page 8, addressing child sexual assault, as with child abuse, means for us to address racism. When Africans were first enslaved, it was necessary for Europeans to evolve a philosophy of justification. In the process, well over 75 million Africans were left at the bottom of the sea. These basic assumptions inform this society's interaction with us to this very day. Ideas which have become enshrined in this country's culture. The abused child feels responsible for what has taken place. The abused child feels dirty. The abused child feels alone. The abused child feels angry. The abused child feels negative about themselves, and all these feelings feed into the impact. An African child who has been sexually abused can confuse this whole experience with what it is to be an African. The outcome is very often a compounded self-hate. Just reading that section, I'm reminded of the victim of white supremacy racism, Tyler Perry, and he has talked very openly about his history of child sexual abuse. Ms. Jackson, are you familiar with Tyler Perry?
No, unfortunately, I'm not. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. I wish I wasn't either, to some degree. He has made a lot of films. He's made millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars making films, and he is most known for his Medea film series. This is a black male, Tyler Perry, and in the Medea films, he dresses up as a female. For the whole movie, he's in a dress, glasses, pretending to be this elderly black grandmother. And I think for a lot of people, they look at that and they think, or at least I'll speak for myself. When I look at that, I think, wow, I think that is a direct result of someone who experienced child sexual trauma and is still dealing with the pain that they suffered from that. Does that make sense? Do you think that's what could be happening there?
Quite possibly. I can't put it into accurate context because I haven't seen the films, but it's quite possible.
Wow. Folks out there, if you all have questions you would like to ask, the number is 760-569-7676, and the code is 564-943#. If you have questions you would like to ask, press *6 if you dial that line. If you're on the TalkShoe line, it is *8. Wow, this is on page 9, and I thought this was a real important point, given that I've seen in the UK, well, I guess it's worldwide, but I've seen in the UK that there have been more debates and reports about quote-unquote transracial adoption, and specifically having white people adopting black children. This is on page 9. You write, if we have any hope of putting our house in order, we have to accept that racism exists and that it festers in every aspect of life. It is present in institutions such as mental health care, prison service, education. When parents in a northern town fought against their children being exposed to an Asian language, with which the majority of children attending the school spoke as their first language, I wonder what they were protecting their children from. Why did they feel it was detrimental to their children's learning? Couldn't they see that exposure to any challenge to learning is an enhancing experience? Would they have done the same if the language had been French? Look at how we describe some of the languages from the Caribbean. For example, Pidgin English, fractured English, broken English. I'm reminded of David Starkey's comments during the riots last summer. Continuing, when in reality they are special languages in their own right. The problem with such an emotive subject as racism is that we all have our own views about what is considered to be offensive and who will be offended. I would like at this point to remind you about the definitions at the beginning of this chapter. If you are black, you have probably been subjected to racism. If you are white, you have probably been racist in your time by thought, word, or action. The grandparents who, when their mixed race, beautiful grandchild asked them why she wasn't the same color as them, and her mom told her she would grow out of it, were being appallingly racist. Not only had they confirmed that to be black was undesirable and inferior, but that it was like a disability which one could lose through maturity. How much worse it must be for the black sexually abused child to be alone, voiceless, and flawed in an all-white world. When I read that, those images, the debates around transracial adoption came into my mind, and I was very interested in hearing your thoughts around all that, given what you've written.
I have real concerns about transracial adoption, not because I feel that parents from a different race or colour skin can't give love and affection and security, but my question is always not why, but what are you going to offer to the child? When we had the issues in Romania or China, when we had the dying rooms, I don't know if that was publicized in America, but we had a series of documentaries about female children in China who were left to die because the population was too big, and it was at a time when parents were only allowed one child. So if they had a male child, they would keep him, but if they had a female child, they would leave her or they would put her in an orphanage. And there were lots of people going out to China or going out to Romania to rescue these children. And my question was always, why do you want to remove them from their country of birth? Why can't we do more to support their country of birth, to change its attitudes, or to support a better healthcare system? So I've always had that concern. I mean, I am curious as to why somebody like Madonna would adopt children from African countries when I'm sure there are other children that she could adopt who would have a more familiar culture and they wouldn't be so obviously different to their mother. So I do have sort of issues around that.
Excellent point. In my view, there's been so much of it. Madonna, Sandra Bullock, who, in my view, not coincidentally, she does the film The Blind Side. Academy Award, becomes a huge hit. The Blind Side played in the UK, I'm sure. You're familiar? Are you familiar with that? Okay, that's what I thought. And then soon as that film finishes, where she in the film is adopting a black child, and it shows black people being totally incapable and inept at parenting, then in real life, the film is now being played out for real. She adopts a black child. Recently, Charlize Theron, she's a white woman from South Africa. She goes to adopt a black child. In my view, I have those same questions, and I have to think, because as I pointed out earlier, I don't believe that white people, generally speaking, are concerned with equality. The whole history has been white supremacy. This could just be another form of white supremacy where we are looking to exercise domination over non-white people. And I think it can be a real, and sometimes it's not even very subtle, it can be another way of showing that black people are not capable parents. That
can do it better.
Yeah, exactly. Context of White Supremacy. Again, our guest, Valerie Jackson. This is, I'm moving forward a little bit. This is page 21 in the book. What does it and how can we stop it? Next chapter in the book, Racism and Child Protection. Real important section. I thought you talking about different profiles of an abuser. You write, the question of who abuses children is as complex as it appears simple. Who could be anyone, male, female, adult, child. The list of characteristics describing a typical child sexual abuser includes suggestions that they have an inadequate personality, they have an exaggerated need to control, they do not form adult relationships easily, they have a subjective memory, they are manipulative, they are highly seductive, they have a strong sexual performance needs. The list is seemingly endless. A word of caution is necessary here. Most research into the profile of a sex offender is carried out on those who are caught, tried, and imprisoned for their crimes. They are also the ones who invariably claim to have been abused during childhood. I think we should begin to tell it like it is. An offender is an offender. There can be no acceptable excuse allowed. There can be no sympathy given. Sexual abuse and rape are acts of violence performed on the body, but wounding the psyche. Real important section, and I hope parents are listening to the program. What would you tell folks who try to get some sort of prototype in mind for what a child sex abuser is like? What would you tell them in terms of just being cautious that a child sex abuser can really be anyone?
I think apart from the fact that a child sex abuser can be anyone, what I would say to all parents is trust your instinct. If an adult, for example, is overly friendly, who contacts your child, whether they're a football coach, whatever they are, if you feel it is more than the normal responsibility of an adult towards a child, trust your instincts. Whilst you can't accuse everybody of being a child abuser, I think the best thing you can do is keep your own child safe. And even if your child doesn't necessarily thank you for it, so what? You keep your child safe. You don't protect them. You talk to them about what can happen out there. You help them protect themselves so that they become instinctively aware of who are good and who are not so good as far as they're concerned.
Real important. You write pretty strong words, in my view, in writing. There can be no acceptable excuse allowed. There can be no sympathy given. And that, to me, huge bells went off. The clip that I played at the beginning of the program with Jerry Sandusky, you said you weren't familiar with that case, but it has been huge news. I would say it's been one of the biggest news stories in this part of the world for the last 7-8 months. Major university, they had to fire the president of the university, the vice president resigned, the athletic director was fired, the football coach was, lots of important white people lost their jobs around this case, where a former football coach, he is now in jail. He's been convicted. He was convicted on 43 counts around child sexual abuse. At least 20 people have stepped forward so far and say that they were victimized by this white man. Just from the sound clip at the beginning, where he was caught repeatedly, over and over, caught in the shower with a child, caught performing oral sex on a 10-year-old child, repeatedly caught, and nothing was done, where he was just allowed to continue victimizing these children. The day that he was convicted, and this is just 2 weeks ago, the day that he was convicted, CNN had an article, and they were saying, should there be sympathy for pedophiles? And this was written by Dr. James Cantor. He went on CNN a couple days after this report was published, and there was further dialogue. Now, interestingly enough, they had the person who was giving the interview with Dr. James Cantor, Don Lemon. He is a victim of child sexual abuse, and he's talked about this publicly. He was the one who started the dialogue in saying that he felt bad for Mr. Sandusky, seeing him handcuffed and trotted off to jail. He's going to spend the rest of his life in jail. That he felt bad, that he didn't feel good seeing all this. I wanted to play this clip where this interview took place, where you can just hear the words that are being used and to get your thoughts on it. It's about 3 minutes long. I want to play this and then get commentary from Ms. Jackson. Context of White Supremacy. This is Don Lemon and James Cantor, their CNN interview from just 2 weeks ago.
This next story you're going to talk about, there's a lot of people talking, so pay attention to this. No doubt, what was revealed during the Jerry Sandusky case is horrifying, but a CNN.com commentary raises a thought-provoking question. Should pedophiles be extended some measure of sympathy? Are we doing enough to identify and help pedophiles before they victimize our children? Dr. James Cantor wrote that commentary. He is a psychologist and a senior scientist at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health in Toronto, and he joins us now. Doctor, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
I want to ask you something, and I know people are going to probably send me a lot of hate mail for this. I've never been one to take glee in anyone's demise, and when I saw Jerry Sandusky walk out in handcuffs, I did kind of feel a bit sorry for him, even though I know the jury found him to do some horrific things. I was like, his life is over. All of these young boys, it was terrible for them as well. There are no winners. In your piece, you say someone has no choice to be a pedophile, but someone can choose to not be a child molester. So explain that to us.
Well, we have to understand very specifically that pedophilia is separate from child molestation. Pedophilia refers to the actual, genuine, underlying sexual interest. For some reason, and we haven't worked out the details yet, there are some people born with a genuine sexual interest in children. They didn't ask for that. Nobody asks to be a pedophile. That just seems to be the case for these people. But that's very different from child molestation, which is a choice. They can't control what they're attracted to, but they can control what they do with those attractions.
So someone was born that way with and they can't help themselves, but that's not to make an excuse for their behavior.
Exactly. I mean, they're not responsible for what they're attracted to. They appear to be born with it. We know through a series of brain studies, both from my research group and from other teams, that they're born with slightly different brain anatomy. And the differences that they show are not the kinds of differences that emerge over a lifetime. Rather, they seem to be the kind of differences where whatever the chain of events it is, that chain of events began before birth. It really had nothing to do with any choice that they made. What they do with those interests, however, is of course still completely under their control. Now, the cases that we see are, of course, the cases who have been unable to resist their sexual interests. And those are the cases that hit the news, and in some cases, they can have a string of victims over many years. But there also exist, Dan Savage once called them the gold star pedophiles. These are men who, they know that they're attracted to children and struggle every day trying not to express those feelings and not to hurt anybody.
Yeah.
Those are the people that we really need to help.
Yeah. Does someone like Sandusky deserve sympathy? I mean, in your experience, are people who prey on children, are they misunderstood?
Well, I mean, the people who actually engage in those behaviors, I mean, they need to be dealt with really on the basis of what it is that they did. There's nothing in any research that says that somehow they're not responsible for their behavior. But the day before somebody becomes a child molester, they weren't a child molester. It was in that day when they felt like they had nowhere else to turn, nobody to talk to, nobody to unburden themselves, when they felt the most desperate. That's when they needed to, for example, go to a psychologist.
Yeah.
But the way that the rules are set up today, if they go to a psychologist, that psychologist has to report them.
Yeah.
So rather than having a society where people can go in and get the help they need, we have forced these people to be out on their own, unsupported, and then we damn them when there were no supports available to them ahead of time. I think society as a whole would be much better off if these people had an alternative, if they had someone or some way that they could do, some group, some institution, some helpline, in order to prevent them from going from just a pedophile to an actual child molester.
Well, it's very interesting stuff. I mean, how can you defend, and many people will say, how do you feel sorry for someone who rapes a child? And even there are people who do it to, quite frankly, babies, and I don't know if that person deserves sympathy, but
well, sure, but that's now holding somebody responsible for their behavior, which is appropriate.
Yeah.
But before they engage that behavior, they're not responsible for their sexual interests.
Yeah.
If we were able to identify these people, for example, very early on and help provide them with the tools to control their own behaviors and their own interests, then we could prevent them from becoming a child molester.
Yeah.
So much of society right now is built into revenge and being punitive. But we could probably do a lot more people a lot more good if we got in earlier and just helped them deal with their interests before they actually acted on them.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Cantor. Interesting stuff.
The Cows, again, Don Lemon and Dr. James Cantor. Ms. Jackson, what are your thoughts on that segment?
That was an interesting one. The original definition for a paedophile was a child lover, and the expectation was that that was acceptable because children love to be loved, and that children also love to be sexually loved. As far as I'm concerned, that has never been the case. Children are sensual, not sexual. Sexuality is something we develop as we mature. Children love to be touched, to be tickled, to be stroked, to be kept safe. I do agree that perhaps there should be a way that we could offer some therapeutic support for people who have so far resisted what they see as their inevitable sexual urges to molest children, because the only people who actually get therapeutic support are those already in prison. So maybe we do have to change the laws, because also in Britain, if you go to a therapist and you say, I have these urges, the therapist is legally obliged to report to the police what that person has said to them. But I still can't feel sympathy. I cannot feel sympathy towards someone who has destroyed a child's life or children's lives. How is that possible? Those wounds are so hidden that unless someone trusts you enough to say, this is what happened to me as a child, they are damaged forever. And so their life sentence began as soon as that person started to touch them.
Wow. I, again, caution listeners, in my view, that sort of thing where it is being discussed, and CNN major network where it's being discussed, perhaps we should feel some sympathy for Jerry Sandusky and individuals who molest children. In my view, that is very dangerous. That is the sort of thing that could, in my view, make it a lot easier for this sort of thing to happen. If we're saying that, maybe we should be feeling bad. Maybe we should be feeling sorry for these people. Maybe we should be sympathizing with them. I do not have any sympathy for Mr. Sandusky or anyone else who has participated in any sort of sexual violation of children. I have nothing but contempt. Now he, can talk about that's just being punitive and you're not trying to help people out. Maybe therapy would work if you can catch them before they get started with all that. But I even think that is phenomenal. I think that would be great if folks, report that to the proper authorities, enforcement officers, and let them know this person has, indicated that they have some sort of sexual interest in children. I think that's correct. Do you think that's a correct policy that people, go ahead and report that immediately, even if they haven't acted out on it?
Yes, I do. What I would like is for, as soon as that's reported, for someone to say to that individual, right, this is what you've said, this is the support we can offer you to help you change your behavior. But like any other addict, and I do believe that child abuse is an addictive thing, particularly child sexual abuse, you have to be willing to want to change. You can pretend, and that's why addicts always fall by the wayside. If you don't want to change, it will never happen.
Context of White Supremacy, I am reminded, Jerry Sandusky, the person that they were talking about, the convicted pedophile that they were talking about, he wrote an autobiography that's titled Touched. And in that autobiography, he commented that he liked to think of himself as the great pretender. He was a real sad case. Anywho, this is on page 22, back to racism and child protection. You list some of the things that people should be mindful of. These are typical patterns that abusers engage in. I wanted to read quite a few of these for our listeners just because I think this is great information. And if you want to add any commentary, feel free to just hop right in. First one, most abusers target a type of child either by gender, by physical appearance, or for some incest abusers because they are property. Wow, the racist implications of that. For most victims, there has been a gradual buildup in intensity of behavior, culminating eventually in some form of penetration. Next one, abusers tend to keep their victims isolated. Jerry Sandusky was doing that. The child labeled as a problem by his or her parents may be trying to tell you something. The child who has few friends or who is not allowed to do the normal things other children do may be at risk of abuse. A child who is scapegoated by the family may be the target of an abusing parent. Incestuous parents don't necessarily abuse all their children.
I think that, if I can hop in there, I think that is also true in terms of physical abuse and neglect. Often one child can be targeted by the parents and therefore by the siblings, and that child becomes the problem. So often you find that where there is a death of a child through abuse, it is one child and the others may be well cared for. So I think that's a phenomenon that goes right across all aspects of abuse.
The next one we got is the child who has a special relationship with an adult especially a family friend, may also be victimized. These friends of the family may, when you stop to think about it, know lots about you, but you actually know the barest minimum about them. Most abusers at some time bribe their victims with gifts or special attention, making them important in the child's life. Jerry Sandusky was doing that, taking them on trips, sporting events. The parents were even wild, like, wow, this is the greatest thing in the world. Most abusers normalize the relationship with the child in such a way that other adults may not necessarily identify abusive behavior, but feel uncomfortable when in the presence of the child and the abuser. Lingering full-mouth kisses are not normal behavior in any culture to my knowledge. Kisses on the mouth maybe, but it is the intensity which is the giveaway. At some time, the abuser may become so confident about not being challenged that they may publicly display more overtly bizarre behavior. There may be secrets between the abuser and the abused. The abuser has already allowed the child to take full responsibility for the abuse. You're the image of your mother. I can't help myself. Or, you know this is what you want. Next one, fear becomes a part of the secret relationship, and abusers know exactly how to keep children quiet. Next up, most child abusers abuse more than once. Some abusers use religion as a silencer. Some abusers use sex as punishment. Others use it as a reward or an aspect of play, or it may be carried out in silence with no explanation at all. All abusers of children are well aware of children's behavior, how to silence them, how to make them feel guilty. They are power magnets. Very important point. You move down and you give some of the things that should be done to help in the recuperation process and dealing with and preventing sexual abuse. This is on page 23 and 24. Starting, you write, black children are often doubly confused by the dilemma of coping with their experiences of racism and being abused by someone who may be from their own culture or who may be from a different cultural group. Before we look at developments necessary in the professional child care industry, let's work out what a black child will need in order to survive the ordeal with some hope of recovery. You list out 5 specific details. A good sex education. Specifically, an abused child is often confused about what happened to her body and the feelings that accompanied the abuse. For children from some of the more protective cultures, it is also important that they clearly understand what happened to them was not a result of their wickedness, nor has it spoiled them for adulthood. In Madras, for example, the first center for abused children has only recently been opened. There is still the problem that girls who have been abused cannot marry, so they are considered to be worthless to their families. The abuse is often hushed up and not acknowledged. There has to be negotiation between keeping girls innocent and not giving them any information at all. Anything you want to share on that one before I move to the next point?
Only that it goes back, and I think this goes back to, we could look at slavery, we could look at, in Britain in particular, we had serfs where we had lords of the manor, and it was the prerogative of either the slave owner or the lord of the manor to deflower all the eligible young girls. And what happened as a result of that, and I think I've said it somewhere else in the book, is that the girls' fathers would often take away their daughter's virginity themselves in order to prevent them from being spoiled by the slave owners or the lords of the manor. And that was done as a protective quality. But it doesn't spoil anybody. What it does is it harms them psychologically, and that's the problem.
Wow. The second point that you touch on, children should be given support in building their self-esteem. For the black child, this is even more important. To be proud of who you are should not be the privilege of the non-abused child. Being black did not cause the abuse. The abuser caused it. Anything to add on that one?
It's back to we have to stop victimizing the victim, and that's society as a whole. We cannot blame the person who was abused for what happened to them. It is not in any way acceptable. So just because you're black did not cause that abuse to happen to you. It was the person who did it to you whose fault it is.
The third point, children who are abused often need to relearn certain social skills which may have been disrupted as a result of the trauma. Being able to talk to one's peers, being able to converse with adults is a vital part of a child's re-entry into the world of the normal. How about that one?
Often if a child has been consistently abused or been groomed over a number of years, then they have had to learn social behavior that keeps their abuser happy. So in a sense, they have to stop behaving like a victim, and we have to retrain their brains to think of themselves as a non-victim. And that takes a lot of doing.
What are some of the ways that you have seen victims of sexual abuse continue to behave like a victim?
I think if you have been, for some reason, abusers can detect if a child has already become victimized because they've learned those behaviors that protect their abuser. So they've learned to be quiet. They've learned to avoid eye contact. They've learned, for example, if a child has been persistently abused by oral sex, then they've learned to stop eating. They've learned to cover their mouths. They've learned how to stop themselves from blurting out what's happened to them. So often you get self-abuse following that. If you can cut yourself, it's a pain you can deal with because you can see the blood. So potential abusers, often victims are victimized by more than one abuser. And it doesn't have to be a sex abuse ring. It can be independent, if you like, abusers, but they identify and they recognize the abusing, the victim's behavior. So they know that they can start abusing sooner with that particular victim.
Wow. Number 4 on the list, assertiveness training should be an automatic consideration. It empowers the child and allows him or her to seek support in an appropriate manner. It may also provide enough self-awareness to prevent subsequent potential abusers from victimizing the child.
Yes. It's a bit like I was saying before, but we also have to look at how the child sees their body. And often what we find is that children who have been abused from a very early age have no concept of how their body fits together. So if you ask them to draw a picture of a person, they wouldn't necessarily be able to put all the features in the right places because they have this distorted concept of what their body is, depending on how their body has been used.
The final point on the list here, awareness of roles and the boundaries will help the abused child see how the abuser stepped out of line. It offers the black abused child child release from the responsibility of protecting the reputation of their culture, particularly if the abuser was from the same culture, and places the blame where it belongs. So if a white man abuses his child, the situation is looked at in terms of his individual problem. But if a black man abuses a child, racist stereotyping will point the finger at black culture.
Yeah, because it would confirm to every white person that this is what black people do.
Wow. I'm reminded of the film's Precious, a lot of entertainment where this comes out. I see these stereotypes made to the hulking rapist black male can't control himself, will rape man, women, child, anything he can get his hands on. You got several, and these were important part of the book, but difficult to read. Case studies from different black people who had experienced some form of sexual abuse. I wanted to read a few of these just to kind of convey the power of these stories. But I wanted to ask, again, as a white woman, how did you go about securing these stories? And did the black people, did they have any hesitancy about opening up about something so deeply personal and traumatic to a white woman?
You know, I think I have met some wonderful people. What I did was I put an advert in a newspaper that we have called The Voice, which is a predominantly black paper. It's for black people, written by black people. And I just put an advert in there asking anyone who had been sexually abused during their childhood and who felt it may have been linked to the colour of their skin to get in touch with me. And I had some incredible responses, as you can see. Not one of them said, "Why are you doing this? Because you're white. It's got nothing to do with you." Everybody generously talked to me either on the phone or face to face. Honestly, I met some wonderful people.
Wow. I want to share a couple of these. This is from on page 28. This is from a female survivor, age I guess at the time this was published, she was 34. She writes, "My cultural background is Caribbean and Christian. The abuse was carried out by a male family member. He was about 18 when the abuse began, and I was about 9. It continued for 4 years. It stopped because he was caught lying on top of me by my auntie. He told me that if I said anything to anyone, he would kill me. So because you are frightened, you keep it to yourself. You pretend everything is normal. At the time, I didn't think about culture, but yes, it was common in our family. I think that my mother and aunties were abused. My cousin was abused as a young boy by the same family member. Even my brother wanted to have a go at me, but it didn't get that far with him. He stopped abusing me when he was caught. My grandfather called him into the parlor and hit him with an iron bar. That was his punishment. Nothing was said about the matter again. As for me, I was beaten by my mother with a belt. My father said, 'Leave her. She will only do it again.' I was beaten very badly. I feel they protected him more than me and cared about how he felt more than I did. Even now, we never talk about it, even though I need to. I'm messed up inside. I feel every man I have been with is a sexual abuser in their own way. They only want you for one thing, sex. I can never say I have enjoyed sex. I have always felt dirty afterwards. I have never received any support. In my life, all I ever wanted was to be loved by my family. You didn't expect someone in your family to be having penetrating sex with a 9-year-old. As a result of that, I have no peace within me. When I am having sex with any partner I have had, I pretend to be someone else. I pretend to climax when I know I haven't. I portray this woman who is very good in bed even though I feel so dirty. It is all an act. I have never been able to express how I really feel, and it has affected me in every relationship I have had. Really powerful anecdote. What are some of the aspects of this particular person's experience that you would say are common, things that you've seen before with other black people who experienced some form of sexual trauma as a child?
I think, again, we have to look at the history in my country. In the 1950s, Britain invited people from the Caribbean countries to come over and work in our country. And they came over specifically to work on the buses and also in the hospitals. So they were guests. Initially, they were welcomed as guests. That's how they were perceived. And I think what happened with this particular young woman, and what happens with a lot of young women, particularly from the Caribbean cultures, is that somehow what happened in the family was the collusion that if we tell outside of this family, then they will think that people from the Caribbean are all like this. So we have to keep quiet. And if it happened to you as a girl, then it was your fault. Hence, she was beaten by her mother. And you'll find in a number of the case studies that people shared with me, they were the ones punished. It was never the abusers. It was always the victims, really, that were punished. And even though the brother was hit with an iron bar, it was almost like you would do with a rabid dog. You know, you hit them once and they'll never forget it. So it was only really to teach him a quick lesson or to get him off. And I think the excuse is that hot-blooded males have to do these things, but girls are supposed to find a way to stop them from doing it.
She talks about how she is not able to talk about this with her family members and the adverse impact that has had on her ability to recuperate from this process. Just can you touch on that, just for any of our folks who are listening in who've been through any form of sexual abuse, why it is important to be able to open up about these issues, especially to family, friends that are close to you?
The difficulty is that if you've been victimized, particularly sexually, often your mindset remains at the age when the abuse began. In this girl's case, 9 years. So in her mind, she still reacts like the 9-year-old, fearful, frightened, betrayed child. And if she doesn't find a way of sharing how she feels, and it doesn't necessarily have to be with family, I think in a way, me being white was, for this girl anyway, it was a positive, because I didn't belong to her culture. I didn't belong to her race. So telling me wasn't as traumatic for her as telling someone who was the same color as her or who came from the same community. So in a way, I think she could use me as a therapeutic tool for the time that she spoke to me. With all of these people, I have to say, I didn't just drop them. I did leave the door open. I gave them my telephone number, my contact details, so that if they wanted to talk further, because it's like anything else, if you keep the door closed, everything's okay. Once you open that door, all sorts of troubles fly out, and I didn't want any of them to feel abandoned just because I was writing a book. So every one of them was given my contact details, and they could contact me as and when they so desired.
Wow. Context of white supremacy, real important. Wow. Before I read the next case story, I will tell folks, if you're listening in, if you have any questions, Comments, the number to dial is 760-569-7676, and the code is 564-943#. Press star 6 if you're on that line if you have any questions. If you're on the TalkShoe line, press star 8. This is from a case study from a male, and I know this has come out, I guess, since we've been doing more programs around sexual trauma, that I guess often people think that it's females. If someone is a victim of some sort of sexual trauma, particularly as a child, it's a female, and there are a lot of males who are sexually abused at a young age, and that just gets overlooked, or people think that, I guess you get more of that, well, they must have wanted it, or they must have encouraged it, or it should be something that they're proud of, that sort of thing. Can you talk, I guess, about some of those stigmas around not thinking that males are also victims of child sexual molestation, and how that even contributes to the problem?
Yeah, it's a challenge to the male psyche. The expectation is that if you're male, the only place you're likely to get raped is in a prison where men have needs. Again, we go back to the men have needs. So if you're raped as a young boy, then clearly, as far as society is concerned, there's something wrong with you. It's not the abuser, it's you. And so I think, particularly if you're black, because a lot of black cultures have a very strong male identity, which is how it should be. And I think it just sort of, it shoots their feet from underneath them yet again, which is why most males, particularly in black cultures who've been abused, don't come forward. This particular gentleman, I went to visit him in his home. He welcomed me into his home. Honestly, I can't tell you how grateful I was for him to come forward. It took a lot. I could see it took a lot for him to come forward and talk to me.
Wow. This is page 36 of Racism and Child Protection. This survivor, he was 34 at the time this was published. He writes, I'm from a Caribbean Christian background. I was abused by a male family friend when I was 8 years old. He was 18. The abuse continued for about a month. I told my father, but he said I must have been dreaming. The abuse stopped when we moved house. I have had no other contact with the abuser. Shortly after the abuse stopped, the abuser came to see me in my new home, and my father made him to understand he was not welcome. I looked on this person as a brother. I am still upset that my father didn't believe me at the time, even though he does now. Since I remembered the experience, I feel damaged in some way. I started to see a counselor on a weekly basis, but he moved house without warning and our sessions stopped. I told a girlfriend about the abuse and she was supportive at the time, but when we split up, she used the information to humiliate me. I find it difficult to trust people now. I believe that the abuse of non-white children is passed over as unimportant. There is no knowing how this affects future relationships. I wouldn't know how to act if I saw my abuser again. Wow. Real, again, powerful anecdote from black male. I guess, man, it's tough to deal with. I can see why people, just reading this, I mean, it affirms so many things in terms of why people don't step forward. You tell your parents and they don't believe you. Then you get older, you tell your therapist, and then that relationship gets cut off. The therapist moves or relocates. You tell a partner, and then she ultimately uses that in a vindictive manner to further humiliate you publicly. I can see so many reasons why people are uninterested in opening up and talking about this, either when they're a child when it happens or after they become older and are looking for outlets to kind of share about this.
I think the important thing as well to note about this particular person is that it was a short-term abuse. It was a month. It doesn't matter, even if it's only once. The effect it has on that individual can be lifelong. And for him, what he'd learned was he couldn't trust people who are there to offer counselling or therapy. They disappear without trace. You can't trust a partner because they use it against you. So he's learned not to trust anybody. And, you know, what an unhappy person he is. So now he's frightened of developing any new relationships because he doesn't know if he can tell his next partner in case they do the same thing.
What suggestions would you offer to victims who might have, they would say, valid reasons, and I would say that those are certainly valid concerns with regards to not wanting to open up about this, either with a counselor or family members, for fear that they might not be believed, or fear that, you know, the person that they entrust with this information might take it and then violate that confidentiality. What suggestions would you offer?
I think for somebody like this, what I usually do with my survivors of abuse clients is say to them, write it all down, keep it to yourself, but say it out in words, on paper, then you know it's true. You haven't made it up. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. This is what happened to you, and you'll be amazed at how much detail you can remember. And once you have that piece of paper with everything written on it, you can choose what to do with it. And it's almost like saying to them, do you want to hold on to that memory and keep it that acute and waste the rest of your life? Or do you want to burn it or bury it or tear it up? What do you choose to do with that memory? And often that's a good starting point, because then nobody else is involved. If they really feel courageous, they will write it and give it to me, and they trust that I will not read it until they give me permission. They also trust that if I am asked by them to return that letter, that's what I will do, unopened. And so it's that build-up of trust, but it is about writing it out for themselves in the first place. All that pain has to come out. If it stays inside, it does harm to you as the person. You have to get your pain outside of your body.
It's therapy, even if you have like a diary or a journal, if you write it down, even if you don't write it with the intention of sharing it with a therapist or a friend, family member, even just writing it down, that has a cathartic, positive impact for the victim?
Yes, it does. And it's the beginning, because you can see your words. You can see that you haven't made it up because you haven't got that sort of imagination. You can affirm to yourself that it did happen. And that, for a lot of people, is step one.
Wow. Context of White Supremacy. You provide some other case studies in the book to kind of walk through this process of how the child molestation aspect, in terms of how a victim may respond, be it acting out or becoming more isolated and shutting down, as well as how other people, child care providers, teachers, social workers, parents, how they all respond in these situations, and how the racism creeps into these situations, and how that also impacts what's going to happen to the child, the perpetrator, family members. One of the anecdotes that you share, this is on page 44, the first anecdote dealing with a situation that you kind of made up with a victim named Leon, black male child who's been sexually abused, and he has a white nursery school teacher who's been dealing with him, and just kind of looking at some of the things that she says and how she talks about this child and his behavior, you can see the racism, and you can see how that impacts how a black victim of child molestation is not going to get the treatment that they should, how their abuse, their trauma is just going to be compounded by racism, white supremacy. This is on 44 going over to 45. My name is Mrs. Clark. I am Leon's nursery teacher. I was trained in secondary education, but I found that I had difficulty controlling the other children. They were so boisterous, they frightened me, particularly the colored boys, who were quite insolent. I felt that my skills would be best suited to the little ones, who just need love and cuddles. They enjoy playing, so there's not much to do. I make a point of treating all the children the same. I won't tolerate unfairness. Some of the parents don't speak English very well, but if I just smile at them and talk very slowly and loudly, they seemed to understand. Using simple language really helps, because they're just like children, really, aren't they? I like to have the children come to sit on my knee when I'm telling a story. Leon used to enjoy sitting on my knee, and I learned some interesting things about his family. He once told me that his mother plaits his sister's hair when they are asleep. I love his imagination. He's very bright for his age. I've stopped letting him sit on my knee now because he used to get a bit rude. He would try to touch my chest or pinch me. He gets a bit overexcitable sometimes too, and wants to kiss me on my mouth. I don't allow that. Recently, Leon has been more naughty than he usually is. All the little colored boys are lively, but that's just their way. But there have been times when he has started to bite the girls, and I've even found him lying on top of one the other day. He's becoming a bit of a bully. I'm a little bit frightened of him now. You just never know with this type of child, do you? You give some of the commentary for some of the, I think, blatant and not so blatant ways that the racism, white supremacy is being expressed by this nursery teacher?
These case studies are made up. I made them up, but what I've been doing through my work is I gather examples of where I see unconscious racism. So for me, the first statement that shows that this woman is racist and doesn't realize it is by saying, I treat all children the same. There is no way that you can treat every child the same. Every child has to be treated in the way that suits them. And from then on, what she shows is her fear. Her fear of something different, her fear of someone who she perceives as non-English, her fear of bright, lively children with different colour skin. And she uses the example, and again, when I worked with Caribbean and African students, a lot of them were mothers, and they used to do the plaiting of their children's hair at night when they were asleep, because often it takes a long time, and the children are so used to it, they used to sleep through it. So there was lots of things there. This woman has clearly never educated herself, even in different cultural awareness. So I wanted to highlight that point, that, you know, this woman may have set off wanting to be a good person to work with small children, but actually she was poisonous, because she didn't recognize what was in front of her eyes.
In your experience, child care providers, teachers, or social workers, in your experience, is it common for white women, white men who are working in those fields to make comments like this, to sound like this?
I think it's more common than I'm happy with. Certainly there is a lot more multicultural awareness in training, but that usually only applies to things like when the festivals are, or the names for the different types of dress that people wear. It doesn't go deep enough, in my opinion, and I think the only way we can make it better is by challenging ourselves. But politically, you have to tiptoe around, and that's what makes me so angry about racism. I'm tired of tiptoeing around, and although this book was written in 1996, I really don't feel that life has changed that much in this country.
I would agree. Unfortunately, this area of the world either. I think a lot of this stuff it would be just as applicable today. One of the things that I have seen with the trainings, the quote-unquote multicultural trainings or diversity trainings, what I've seen is that frequently what will happen is that if we take, even though this is fictitious, someone like this nurse in this example with Leon, where she will get the trainings, right? So she'll realize, oh, okay, me saying that I'm frightened of these children, that's kind of a pattern and that sort of thing. They might alter the words that they use when they communicate about black and non-white children, but the thoughts are still there. And those white supremacist, racist thoughts are still manifested in racist treatment towards the black and non-white children, even though the language has been sanitized. And I think that makes it, in my view, that makes it even more dangerous, because at that point you don't really have any words to latch onto and say, see right there, she's making racist comments or he's making racist comments. You have lost some of the evidence to cite that this person might be a racist. Now you're just left with the effects, but you don't really have anything that would suggest why this is happening. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That I consistently cited, I've said, because they have a lot, that's kind of a big thing in this area of the world, the anti-racism trainings and diversity trainings, anti-racism workshops in the workplace. And what I've said, it allows racist white people to become more skilled at the way that they practice racism. They become a lot more difficult to catch. It's not that they're not practicing racism anymore. They've just become a lot more clever about the way that they go about practicing racism, and a lot of it is just around, they are a lot more mindful about what they say. Yes, I think for me, one of the key people that influenced, I suppose, my quest to try to challenge racism was actually an American called Jane Elliott. I don't know, she'd been on Oprah Winfrey a few times, and she did the blue eyes, brown eyes experiment to try to help her children where she taught to understand that no one is more superior to anybody else. And I think she did a lot of good work there, but even now, even though she's a lot older and she still tries to do these workshops, she came over to England and tried to carry them out. And even though she was working with people who'd seen what she did, they still went into that defensive mode. They still said from the beginning that this won't help me because I'm not racist. And I think it's that masks so many problems that we suffer from. It's very difficult for somebody to hold their hands up and say, okay, I'm racist. Help me, help myself. I think it's a challenge, and some that we're not prepared to take on.
Jane Elliott, she's been a guest on this program 3 times. In fact, she told us some of the details when she went across the pond and how the white people in the UK responded to her and got very, very defensive, very angry what she was doing. I think that made the news over there. It was pretty big deal when she went over there and got all those white people riled up. But yeah, Jane, she admitted that she is a racist when she's on the program. And I would say it is white people. I think that's one of the things too that's very important, is to make sure to consistently point out it's white people, to not normalize as though this is everybody, that it is white people who have a difficult time acknowledging, I'm a white person, I'm racist, and let's look at the many different ways that I practice racism, white supremacy on a regular basis. She touched on that extensively in her many visits on the program. Wow. I wanted to make sure before we wrap up, I guess for folks out there, we have about 3 minutes left in the program. So if you think you might have a question, you should get your hand up now. Don't wait till the last minute. This is on page. Let's see, which one do I want to make sure that I get? I'll go to 74. This is on page 74. Close to the end of the book. This is not a very long read, so for anyone out there, if you're interested in reading, getting some material around this issue, sexual abuse and racism, this might be a good starter book. Great information, not very long, won't take you a month to read or anything. This is on page 74. You write, in this report, Bandana Ahmad goes on to say how white professionals who somehow expect a form of gratitude for their anti-discriminatory stance are often offended and may resort to insulting or withdrawing their services from the black ingrates. It is a difficult aspect of racism to accept, i.e., that all or most of us who assert the concept of equal rights for all may still harbor these ingrained imperialistic tendencies. The problem is that these tendencies don't always show themselves in a manner which can be challenged. I have to stop sometimes and question my motives about certain expectations of or attitudes I have towards other people. Perhaps I am also looking for that recognition from the oppressed that I am a fine woman despite my whiteness. How do white professionals feel when they don't receive thanks or other gestures of gratitude? Real important, and I think it's right in line with what we touched on with Jane Elliott and what we were just talking about. What are some of the specific times that you can think of when you have to question your own motives and or expectations that you have towards other people, presumably towards non-white people, black people?
I think it's when I'm trying to think of specifics. It's quite difficult because I guess when you think of yourself as being open-minded, it's really hard to accept that you're not as open-minded as you think you are. But I think it is when, for me, an example would be as I remember seeing the film about Malcolm X, which I know is going away from me a little bit. But in that film, and whether it actually happened in real life or not, I don't know, a white woman said to him, "How can I help? What can I do to help you all, you black people?" And his response was, "Nothing." And I think sometimes I may be racist in the way that I want to help to change things for black people. And maybe black people don't need help. They just need recognition. And maybe I do that too many times. So maybe I do expect gratitude or recognition for the work that I do, when actually I have no right to expect anything at all.
Do you feel like, what you said right here, that you are looking for recognition from non-white people, that you are a really fine woman, not racist? Do you feel like you're looking for that from non-white people?
I think somewhere in me, yes, I must be. I must be. Why would I do this otherwise? It's not conscious, but, we don't all work on just the conscious. So there may be another motivator that I'm struggling to recognize, and it might be exactly that I need some recognition that I have done my best.
We had a person that called in from the UK, your part of the world.
All right.
Machiavelli, if you had a question for Ms. Valerie Jackson, your line should be open.
Can I be heard?
Hello?
Yeah, hi there. Thanks for being a guest on the Cows, and most of all, thank you for being as honest as you can be. I was just curious to know, what part of the UK did you do most of your work in? Are you in London? Are you from outside London?
I actually come from the north of England. I come from the Lake District. But when I did the work, I was living in London. I lived in London for 20 years. So I based a lot of my research on what experience I had when I was working in London, working in the colleges, and being a therapist.
Okay, so specifically, what part of London? North, south?
I was living in northwest London, and I was working from. I take it you know London, do you?
Yes, I live in London myself.
Yeah, I was working from West London, from all the people who sent in their sort of personal experiences were from all over the country. But when I started doing this work, I was working in West London in the colleges round there.
Okay, and also, are you still active now?
Yes, but not in London anymore. I'm now out of London. I'm in Cambridgeshire.
Okay, wow. Do you get much opportunity to talk about this part of the work that you did in Cambridgeshire?
Hardly ever. It's a very white area still.
Okay. Thanks a lot. That's all.
Thank you.
Good to hear from you, sir. I do think that is very important. The point we touched on right there in the book, and I appreciate the honesty. I think that's one thing. Any of the white people that want to know what they can do, never lie to a non-white person. That is one thing that white people could do that would be immensely helpful. As much honesty as we can bear at all times, that would be incredibly helpful with regards to solving this problem. But I think that is a key aspect of how racism works on a real subtle level. I think it is very important for the maintenance of white supremacy racism that there be the illusion, and I will just say there be the false illusion that there are some white people that are not racist. I think that is incredibly important, that non-white people think that there are, even if it's just a handful, that there are some white people that are not racist. I found that is a real important concept in the system of white supremacy, and I believe that it's false. Because even Jane Elliott, a lot of the people that folks would point to, and well, it's not that many of them for starters, but then the people that they do point to, Jane Elliott, she's on this program, she is still a racist. Many of the white people who, alleged to be doing anti-racism work say they would have a very tough time finding you a white person that they could say, this white person is not racist. I wouldn't even know who to point to. I think that is a real important aspect, and that's something that I would caution non-white people. If a white person, if they do great work, and I told Miss Jackson before we got started, I think her book has a lot of great information, but she did say that she's a racist, which is not surprising. I appreciate that. That's something that I think is important to keep in mind, because I would just expect her to be acting out on those racist ideas. We're in a racist, white supremacist world. I would expect, she's a white person, I would expect her to be acting as a racist from time to time, regularly. This conversation tomorrow, next week, next year, I would just have to expect that. And that would be the case for any white person. I would expect at some point this person is going to function as a racist if they are white. And I think that is extremely logical for any non-white person, really anyone who's being honest. It's extremely logical for them to say, yeah, that makes sense and it's accurate. The entire record of history with white people and their relationship to non-white people would evidence that is true. What I've just said, does that make sense? Is it accurate?
Yes, I think it is. I think what the best we can do as white people is strive against our racism, knowing always that there are still hidden aspects to all of us where it still lingers. So I would never ever call myself non-racist, because that would be insulting to people of colour across the world.
Do you think it's possible for someone to be white and not racist?
Unless they've been sort of trapped in a tower for centuries, then no.
Wow. Very important. A lot of black people, a lot of non-white, as you wrote in the book, that the system has been working so well that a lot of black people get infected with those best ideas and they don't even realize it. I think a lot of black people, most black people, I would say, do not understand that. In fact, I think most of the black people that I come in contact with, they strongly assert that black people are racist too. I think that's how good a job white people have done in practicing white supremacy and confusing non-white people. Most of the black people I come in contact with, they believe that black people are capable of practicing racism against white people. So hopefully this program will work towards correcting that. Really appreciate you taking some of the time out of your Wednesday evening to speak with us. I hope people got some value out of the program. The sex abuse issue, we'll be talking about that regularly so you can compare and contrast with some of the different folks that we've had on to talk about this issue. I would just encourage folks to keep in mind the information that we've shared today. Our guest joining us live from the UK. Again, how many folks out there who are listening from different parts of the world can say, wow, this information is relevant, it makes sense, and I see it happening where I reside. Again, global system. This is not something that's just isolated to the UK or the United States, North America, wherever. Global system. This is a problem worldwide, and in my view, you will see a lot of these same dynamics play out wherever you happen to be on this planet. Is there anything you would like to share with our listeners before we get ready to wrap things up?
No, just thank you very much for inviting me onto your program, Gus. I've really enjoyed this, and it's actually been quite interesting to revisit the book. I am a white woman. I am racist by the nature of my history. I can't help but be racist, and I will do my best to continue to work on myself.
Right on. You can visit the website if you want to get more information. It is Valerie Jackson Consultancy.co.uk. Valerie Jackson Consultancy.co.uk. And the book, if you want to check that out, Racism and Child Protection: The Black Experience of Child Sexual Abuse, published in 1996. You can get it on Amazon. I think it's on some other websites too, but I know it's on Amazon. Racism and Child Protection: The Black Experience of Child Sexual Abuse. Really enjoyed having you on the program. We will look forward. I always appreciate having white people who are willing to be as honest as we can bear. I definitely would look forward to having you back on the program. I'm sure there are going to be some other issues popping up around racism, things going on in the UK, so we'll definitely stay in touch and look forward to having you back on the broadcast.
Thank you very much, and yes, I'd be very happy to come back on the program anytime.
Oh, right on. Well, we will hear from you in the future. Thank you again for doing the work, and please enjoy the rest of your Wednesday evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Bye.
Context of White Supremacy. Wow. I have to thank, I'm going to send this to Miss Coleman, Sylvia Coleman, the black female who was with us a couple weeks ago. Her website, again, is blacksurvivors.org. blacksurvivors.org. I'm going to send her the program and thank her, because that's how I found out about Miss Jackson's book. I didn't even know she was a white person until she had agreed to come on the program. We had set a date and everything, and then she dropped the, oh, by the way, I'm a white person. Racist, admitted racist. We'll take a quick commercial break, come right back, and close out, see if anybody has anything they want to share before we wrap things up. Context of White Supremacy.
RacismDaily.com, your number one source for global news reports on race, racism, and overt actions of white supremacy. From Asia to the Americas, to Europe, to Australia, to Africa, racism is not a thing of the past, it is our current reality. Be informed, be globally informed. You should be the first to know. RacismDaily.com, RacismDaily.com, RacismDaily.com.
Is racism hurting you? On issues of race, are you unable to speak, think, and act with clarity and confidence? Are you tired of laughing when nothing is funny, smiling when you are not happy, agreeing when you really disagree? At CounterRacism.com, you can learn specific strategies and techniques to counter the behaviors of the people who practice racism in all areas of activity, using words correctly, following counter-racist logic, even counter-racist science projects designed to reveal what racism is, how it works, and how to counter it. The open source code writing format allows you to pick and choose from a variety of counter-racist suggestions so you can produce the code that works for you. Stop by CounterRacism.com today and help replace racism with justice.
That's counter-racism.com.
Do you need a one-stop shop for all of your multimedia needs? Triumphant Multimedia is a skilled team of professionals with a passion for great marketing and chic design. Our specialties include consulting, brand development, copywriting, and creative graphic design that's second to none. We also offer photography, photo retouching, videography, and video editing. At Triumphant Multimedia, our goal is to provide highly effective creative solutions built to suit any individual need or budget. Give us a call at 678-732-8067 or check us out online at trimultimedia.com.
Hi everyone, welcome. This is Justice with the C.O.W.S radio program. If you want to learn about, understand, and counter racism, white supremacy, be sure not to miss a C.O.W.S episode. We keep them jammed, packed with constructive information to sharpen your use of words to help eliminate the system of racism, white supremacy, ASAP. Also, to be able to invest in my counter-racist efforts, co-hosting the C.O.W.S radio program, please visit my blog, justdojustice.blogspot.com.
You're just saying just buckets and buckets of words.
I got an uncle real crazy. My Uncle B, 55 years old, hates white people, married to a white lady. And he's sitting around going, these crackers ain't shit, except for Susan. And he tried to explain the whole thing to me one day, say, yeah, I got a white wife, I love her, she loved me, that's all that matter. But I tell you this, if the revolution ever come, I'll kill her first. Just to show these crackers I mean business. Motherfucking cracker ass, motherfucking cracker. Shit cracker, motherfucker. Hey, hi, honey. Motherfucking cracker, I'll kill my cracker kids too.
White people are still fussing at Chris Rock about his July 4th tweets. Let that go. We moved on. July 4th is over. The fireworks have been exploded. Moving on. At any rate, I wish, before I get my commentary in, I just want this stated for the record. July 11, 2012, so I have been told, it is hot. I feel like I never get to say I think I can count on one hand the number of times where I have said that since I have been in Washington State. Gus T Renegade, July 11, 2012, Wednesday, 2:15 p.m. Pacific. It is hot. Woo! I'm not complaining, though. I will take it. I'm sure it'll be 40 degrees before the day is over, but at least for right now, it is hot. Anywho, I wish I had looked in the chat room, because I for sure would have been down to ask if she was involved in some sort of sexual intercourse with a non-white person. I wish the folks that were in the chat room had called in and asked that, because that definitely would have been interesting to see if she is involved in such a relationship. But she said she'd be down to come back on the program, so if we can make that happen, I will put that on the top of the list of questions to ask if she is now or has ever been sexually involved with a non-white person. Wouldn't be surprising, though. Admitted racist Valerie Jackson. I will have to say, though, the book does have a lot of solid information. She quotes from a lot of black people, which I think is a pretty standard tactic, particularly amongst refined racists. They will get a lot of information, a la Timothy Wise. They will go and get a lot of information from black people who are less confused and use that in their work. But yeah, she does have a lot of good information, I think, around the issue of racism and child molestation. The anecdote, some of the suggestions, solid stuff. I was pretty surprised. Like, I'm normally, if it's a white person, I'm just expecting some foolishness. And so when I got the book and I started reading, and she starts the book off with her definition of racism. You got to be a white person and blah, blah, blah. And even just starting off with definitions, most of the text that I read that deals with racism, they do not start off with definitions. It's very rare. I think Dr. Welsing, Mr. Fuller, it's a few others, Urugu, Dr. Remember Ani. It's very rare when I read material that deals with racism, white supremacy, where people slow down and they define their terms. They have a glossary, or they start the book out and just, make sure that they define the terms that they're going to be using, and especially racism. So I was a little bit surprised, but, she's still a part of the white supremacist army. It took buckets of words. At the beginning of the program, she said, I know some folks weren't here then. I know Cynical was here, cynicalafrican.wordpress.com. But I was asking her, you're a white person, are you a racist? And I gave my definition, and she was doing the buckets of words. And in that, she said, not knowing what you don't know. Direct quote, she said, not knowing what you don't know, that is a problem for white people, and perhaps having some unconscious racism. So the problem for many white people is that they are not knowing what they don't know. And I just thought, what in the world? Can you be more convoluted? It even reminded me of that episode of the Boondocks, where they're making a joke of George Bush when he made that comment that we got known knowns and known unknowns. And he went on that long, crazy speech where even white people were looking like, what in the hell is he talking about? Yeah. Anywho, that's what you got to expect. I mean, it's white people. It's white people. Again, rhetorically, what does it mean to be a white person? I do appreciate that she answered truthfully on that question, and she didn't have too many buckets of words. Is it possible to be a white person and not be racist? No. She didn't talk for days on that one. She got pretty straight to the point on that one. Anywho, we'll check to see if our caller in the UK, Machiavelli, always good to hear from folks in different spots on the globe. Did you have any thoughts about your fellow England resident and her commentary on the program?
Well, like I said to her, she was honest. I was shocked because white people in the UK, they don't talk about racism, and if they do, it's the usual playbook. It's not all of us, and we don't know that we're doing it, so it excuses it and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, she was very honest, and yeah, I was almost impressed.
I dig it. Almost impressed. I dig it. I would be impressed with the white people if such people ever exist that actually end the system of white supremacy. Those will be the white people that impress me. But until then, yeah, I'm not impressed. Almost impressed. I dig it. I will say that I definitely appreciated that segment, because she has that in the book where she talks about where she is looking for some sort of recognition from non-white people that she's a good white woman. I'm a fine white lady, and I'm not racist. And I think that is extremely important. I was glad that she was able to be somewhat honest about that as well, because I think that's a lot of these white people. Bruce Fine, she was saying she thinks the white attorney that we had on the program a couple days ago, Jasper, Texas, giving us the information about the first black chief that got fired, same category. I'm a good white guy. He said, I like the fact that I can go to bed at night and know that I'm fighting the just cause, and I'm just like the white workers who went down in the South during the civil rights movement and got the water hoses and the dogs and went up against those racists. I get to think of myself as a good white person. I'm not racist. I think that is real important. The idea that there are some white, even if it's John Brown, even if it was a white person that died 200 years ago, that there are some white people that are not racist. That is an incredibly powerful idea, and it's false. It's one of the greatest lies on the planet. Even our infamous guest, Dr. Barbara Trepanier. She was on the program last summer when she said that is one of the biggest things that is keeping us from solving the problem of white supremacy, the myth of thinking that there are some white people that are not racist. It is simply not true, and I hope more black people can get that in their heads. Hopefully the C.O.W.S is helping with that. If you're a white, I'll just leave it there. What does it mean to be a white person? And I'll just leave it there. I thought that was telling too, the fact that she has all those definitions at the beginning of the book, but she does not define what it means to be a white person. And I think that's because you do not want to self-incriminate. Right on. It is hot. I cannot believe it. It is hot. Did you have anything else you wanted to get in, Machiavelli?
Yeah, please, can you stop boasting about the weather? Like, I'm telling you, the UK is terrible. Like, we've had hailstone today, rain all day. It's like, it's just been something crazy. Like, I cannot believe it's summer. I've never seen hailstone in the summer. So in London, it's just been horrible. But one other thing about that lady, well, I would have asked her if she's staying on a little bit longer, is, like, she says she's not really doing that sort of work now. Like, maybe she didn't get the validation and the gratitude that she maybe was looking for when she did the work, because she's not living in London anymore. She's not doing that work, and she's like moved to the most whitest part of the UK, where I know there's probably a minute amount of black people, if any. And you know, she's you know, just like, wow, why she stopped? What happened? Like, she wasn't in this for the long haul. Like, I don't know what happened.
That would have been a good question. I don't know. She seemed like she might have been down to hang out for a second or two. I would have liked to hear her response to that. I know she said at the beginning of the program, she said this book, I'm not sure if she's written any other books, but she said this book, it was not well received. It didn't sell well. So it certainly sounds like there was not a lot of gain, either psychological gain, where black people are coming to sing her praises and tell her that she's just the best white woman in the world, or financial gain. I don't know if any white people got upset. I guess that would have been interesting to note as well, if she got any negative feedback from other white people challenging her about doing this in the first place. But yeah, that is interesting. I don't know I have never been to the UK, so I don't know the region where she's at now. But you said she's in a pretty white area. Maybe that's what happened. She just said, forget it. I'm going to go back and just go hang out with the rest of the racist white people and you know, do our counseling and leave this racism stuff alone.
Yeah, maybe it was a Planet of the Apes moment where they called her back in for reprogramming. I don't know. Wow.
Yeah, I'm going to be looking to see if we can get her back on the program. I'm hoping that there will be some other incidents around quote unquote transracial adoption in the UK, and then that'll be a good excuse, a good topic, and a good reason to invite her back. And then we can definitely want to ask if she's been involved sexually with a non-white person, and then, you know, what prompted her to not do this. Because just looking at her website, she has like a consulting firm set up where they go to, I guess, different workplaces and talk to the employers about quote unquote diversity and other workplace issues. Now, I didn't see racism mentioned when it explains, you know, what they do and the fees and all that. I didn't see racism mentioned. I did see the term diversity used, so some different code language, but it wasn't anything nearly as explicit as what she has written in this book. So yeah, I would be curious as to how that transitioned, why she did that, you know, just what prompted the move.
Yeah, I don't know. I doubt. Maybe in the past she's had some form of relationship or sexual relationship with a non-white person, but I doubt she's taken him or her to Cambridge with her. No way. No, I can imagine that. But yeah, no, good show. And it's just a shame that, obviously, you know, I wish anyone who, like, you know, where the whole scenario and what the research entailed, like, was closer to home to them, because I don't really know too much about that stuff. It's not something I've experienced personally to really see how accurate their information on the whole child abuse stuff was. But yeah, I'll have to check her book out.
Get a used copy. Again, I don't want.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
Get a used copy. If I had an audio book or a PDF of it, I would just post it so people could get it for free. But yeah, I don't want to finance racists for just telling about their criminal exploits. I would say for folks. Oh, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, did you read that article in the UK about the 14-year-old boy raping the 5-year-old and the judge virtually letting him go?
Yes.
He said the environment made him do it. The society's fault. Did you read that? What did you think?
Yes, I did. Gotta be a white person. That would have been a good question to ask about too. Gotta be a white person. I think that happened like last week, wasn't it? It was last week?
Yeah, it was last week. Yeah.
Because I cannot imagine a black person, particularly a black male, committing that sort of heinous crime, and a white man judge saying, Leroy did something bad, but it's not his fault. The videos, and we've got a whole pornographic environment, and he's not to blame. It's our fault. So, Leroy, you got a free pass. I just cannot imagine that happening anytime, anywhere in the universe for a black person to get that sort of excuse. It's the same thing with Jerry Sandusky, where white people...
I was just thinking that. Sorry to cut you guys, but you made that point when you was talking to that Bob, I can't pronounce his surname, when you were saying that maybe, it's the higher up elite white people that, this is really their thing. So, when the judge heard the story and everything, it was close to home. He was like, man, if I was that age, I wouldn't want this to mess up my life. I'm going to let my little homie go because he's just like me. Mm-hmm. That was me when I was that age.
Absolutely. I see that over and over again, where there is sympathy for white people, males, females, children, whatever. If it's a white person and they do something, they are a lot more sympathetic to them and willing to forgive. And everybody makes mistakes and everybody deserves a second chance. And we can't hang that over here. This will ruin your life. Be 14 and for us to, send you to jail for some serious time. Just don't do it again. Come on. And if it's a black person, think about Trayvon Martin. That would be the contrast. They're sitting there criminalizing him. He was a carjacker and a weed smoker, and they said pretty much everything other than he's a child of God. And he died. He didn't do anything criminal to my knowledge. And they have totally criminalized him. Think about the way that they treat black children. And so it doesn't even have to be similar. It can be way less aggressive, way less violent crimes. And they are like, hey, let's persecute him as an adult. I don't care if he's 2. Let's persecute him as an adult. Let's give him life. Let's give him a death sentence or whatever the case may be. It's way more punitive, way more harsh, way less forgiving. So yeah, that's what I was thinking. It had to be a white person, and that should be another illustration of the massive problem that is racism, white supremacy, where white people can pretty much do anything, and it's just not that big a deal. Particularly, I would say around anything involving sexual exploitation of children, really not that big a deal if you're a white person and you're doing that. Yeah, folks can check that out. It was put, I was going to say it was popular, but it might not be. I know a couple of people put it on my Facebook page. Might have been our caller. Put it on my Facebook page last week. I think it was on the BBC and some other UK, but I think even some American media outlets might have picked that. I might be wrong on that, but I know the BBC picked it up, and some of the other major English news sources, they had big articles about that and what the judge had to say, his ruling, the whole nine. I liked it on my Facebook page, as a matter of fact. It's still
that was me who posted it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, my argument was, well, if that's the case, then they should let a ton of young black youths out of jail right now, because this whole rap culture and violent Hollywood movies, that's had an influence on them too. That made them want to sell drugs and be the next this or that. So maybe we should let them out too.
Michael Vick Mr. Fuller said that when they put Michael Vick in jail for killing those dogs, that hey, we picked that up from white people that's sitting around watching you all do cockfights, put that in quotes, and all the other crazy bloody behavior that white people engage in. He should have been pardoned as well. Yeah, just for folks who, if they weren't familiar, if they don't know anything about that report, this was from last July 3rd, right? Boy who raped girl of 5 spared jail as judge says it's society's fault. Teenage boy who raped a girl of 5 was handed a community order by a judge who blamed the world and society for his exposure to pornography. The 14-year-old was spared a custodial sentence after pleading guilty to raping the girl while babysitting her. Judge Gareth Hawksworth said the boy would have been jailed if he had been an adult, but added he had been corrupted by internet porn, giving him a 3-year community order with a supervision requirement. The judge said, "I'm satisfied it was impulsive, and I believe you have become sexualized by your exposure to and the corruption of pornography. Your exposure at such a young age has ended in tragedy. It was the fault of the world and society." Cambridge, oh, this is her neck of the woods. I'm sure she knew about this. Cambridge Crown Court was told the boy, who is now 15, regularly looked at pornography on his laptop at home. He was paid £10 to look after the girl at home in December, but afterwards she told her father she had been raped. The boy said to police, "I think my hormones took over." Judge Hawksworth requested 6 monthly reports to monitor the boy and ordered him to register his whereabouts with the police for 2.5 years. After the sentence, his name is John Brown, that's crazy. After the sentence, John Brown, head of NSPCC's sexual abuse program, said online pornography gives children an unrealistic and sometimes dangerous view of sexual relations. This case underlines why we want a system where adults have to actively opt in to get access to internet pornography. Claude Knights, director of children's charity Kidscape, said, "We have to ask whether the perpetrator's sentence reflects the severity of the crime." I know Bruce Fine, she sent me a report. This happened in the States. I think this happened in the last 7 days. It was a white man. I think he was a bus driver or something. He said that it was caffeine that caused him to sexually assault this female. That was the excuse that he gave. And I did another one. Got to be a white person. I cannot imagine a black person being able to, I just had one too many Coca-Colas and my hormones got the best of me. My bad. I will stick to water. Just want no more Coca-Cola and coffee for me. Only white people can come out with that sort of just blatant foolishness and get away with it.
Yeah, hogwash. But the thing that made me laugh was exposed to pornography. You're not exposed to pornography. Like, you have to log on and, you have to go out your way to access pornography. It's not on adverts. It's not around you 24/7. This young boy, what sort of porn was he watching? I remember being 14. I remember seeing some pornography, and it didn't make me want to rape 5-year-old girls. It made me attracted to older women, but not, like, what was he watching? That's what I want to know. What was he watching?
Who knows? White people have all kinds of zaniness in their pornography. I still don't know how that would translate into, I watched some porn, and the result was me raping a 5-year-old girl. Like, was he watching child pornography? Like,
You had to have been. And that's not, your standard porn that the average adult watches. That's someone who's obviously sick. If you enjoy that sort of stuff, especially at that age, and they're just going to monitor him for 6 months, and by the time he's 16, that's it. I'll be looking out for this guy again anyway. Give it 3 years, he'll be in the news again.
For sure. He should be registered. Do they have a sex offense registry in the UK?
Yeah, we do.
Okay. He should be registered, man. I would be upset if they don't have him registered as a sex offender.
Yeah, I think they do, but how long he's going to be on that register for, I'm not sure. I think they said, 2 years or something like that? 6 months reports and then 2 years monitoring, and that's it.
Man. Yet another example of why the system of white supremacy needs to be replaced with a system of justice. And it's Yurugu. We've been talking about that. Yurugu, absence of that female energy, constant degradation of the female energy. It would be most comfortable particularly for a white man, to sexually exploit a young child. I would say frequently a male child, but male, female, a child, where you get all forms. You get the domination, you get the control, and you're not vulnerable. But this person clearly has no ability to harm you, no power over you, no ability to manipulate you in any way. It's the best of all worlds for Yurugu, racist man. Dr. Marimba Ani, another brilliant illustration of that, in my opinion. Yeah, that case, if you all want to look, where the guy blamed it on caffeine, that happened here in Washington State, where it was a bus driver. He was convicted of groping 3 girls and 2 women at a high school volleyball game, said that too much caffeine made him do it. Kenneth Sands of Raynor, Washington, said in court on Tuesday that the excess caffeine intake drove him into a psychotic episode in which he inappropriately grabbed the women and teenagers last October. White people. I mean, I couldn't even imagine a black person being able to have a straight, like, white people wouldn't even allow him into the courtroom to make that sort of defense. Like, I'm going to just say that I had too much caffeine. That's what I'm going to say. I'm going to tell my attorney, too much caffeine, that's what I'm going to roll with. I think that's what's going to get me out of here. That's how I'm going to beat this case. Blame it on Coca-Cola. Like, white people would, man, get out of here. Get out of here. Like, we're not even going to tolerate you coming in here with that foolishness, wasting our time for the next 5 minutes. Yeah, I don't know how much caffeine he had. I have overdosed on my share of caffeine in my confused state as a victim. I have drinking my share of Coca-Cola and other caffeinated beverages. It never drove me into a frenzy of groping and sexually assaulting people, but I don't know. I'm not white.
And as soon as they get away with.
Yeah, mockery. I totally agree, caller. Total mockery. And it's racism, white supremacy. Yeah. But we will be on, I guess, for our caller in UK, just saying in terms of comparison, contrast with the white woman, Valerie Jackson, our guest on today's program, what she had to say. And, man, I wish I had remembered that incident, because I would have certainly asked her about that, because that, in my view, is a blatant example of racism. But if you all are looking for kind of compare to see if the information that she had to say, if it was valid, if it matches up, if black people who have expertise in this area, if, you know, how their information compares in contrast to what she had to say, we should have a black female who is also got quite a bit of expertise in this area, Lori Robinson. She should be on the program with us next Monday evening. She's also written a book on racism and child sexual abuse. Her book is geared to black people. She's obviously black female, about things that we should be doing to help heal from that process and how you deal with it once it's happened. So, you know, you can tune in this Monday, see what she has to say. Tomorrow, we'll be on the same issue, but the guests, they will be white. I think it should be 1 or 2 white men. Amos Camille, white male. He writes for the New York Times Magazine, and he did the big piece on prep school predators. It was published about 3 weeks ago, where he was talking about just for decades, you had this expensive private school in New York where the teachers were sexually abusing students, and this went on for years. The students reported this, told the administrators about it, and the white people didn't do anything. They let these teachers keep their jobs. Even in one instance, when all this was coming out, one of the abusers, one of the pedophile teachers, was about to retire, and they were going to throw him a big party. And some of his victims were like, you know, we can't be celebrating a pedophile. This guy was molesting us, man. Y'all shouldn't be throwing him a party. He should be fired, and, you know, let's move forward. Let's pursuit of justice. And the school didn't comment, and then they went ahead and threw the big party for him anyway. They took him to one of the more posh clubs in New York City and had this big bash to celebrate his long years of service at this school. Just a real horrific event. And it's actually both of these white people. One of them is an attorney, and he's filing a suit in a different case where it's pretty much the same story. Private elite, quote unquote elite prep school, where the teachers were molesting these students for years. The staff was told about it. They didn't do anything. Allowed the guy to stay there for decades and continued doing this. Some of the victims have ended up committing suicide, alcoholism, drug abuse, just real self-destructive patterns being violated in a real ugly manner, and not having that addressed, not really having anyone value their life or their experience. But that'll be tomorrow evening. You can read that article, anybody if they're interested. The article, it's Prep School Predators. It's on the New York Times website, New York Times Magazine. You can check it out. Amos Camille, that's his name. A-M-O-S Camille, K-A-M-I-L, Amos Camille. And there's another organization. They called me today while we were prepping for this program, Darkness to Light. They have a website, all kinds of information around sexual abuse. Again, the whole reason we're doing these programs is because I know so many of the black people that listen to this program have talked about their experiences being sexually molested, sexual trauma, and I have just begun to realize as I've been studying racism how big a problem this is, and just trying to make an effort to recognize that and to try to get resources, suggestions, and to just get us being more comfortable talking about this. I realize it's not the most enjoyable subject matter, and it's downright uncomfortable, but I think it's necessary just for us to recognize the environment that has been created by racist man, racist woman, and the extreme amount of sexual deviance and sexual abuse that goes on every day, and just being more mindful. I think that'll better equip us to stop these acts. So tomorrow we'll be on this topic again, next Monday, and we'll probably have some more incidents as well. I know I'm trying to get the Dr. James Cantor, the one who was talking about pedophilia is just an attraction to children, not necessarily molesting children. The white man who was having that conversation with Don Lemon, I contacted him as well. I'm trying to see if we can get him on the program to hear more from him directly. But yeah, hopefully we'll have quite a few more of these broadcasts before the month concludes. Child Sexual Abuse Month here on the Context of White Supremacy. Yeah, groovy. I hope it's been constructive. Anything else you want to touch on? Caller in the UK, Machiavelli.
No, not really. Just great show. Keep it rolling. Hope everyone's learning something, and everyone remember the problem is white people.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, do not purchase these white people's books. Say that again. This one, I thought it was constructed, but I got a used copy. It was 1 penny and shipping. So yeah, if you got to get the book, or if it's any of the other white people that we've had on the program, Robert Dvorak, he was on this Sunday with the book about Jerry Sandusky and Penn State. I didn't pay for that book either. Got it for free. If you're into audiobooks, I think they have a program set up on audible.com where you can get a free audiobook. You sign up, and you just have to cancel the membership. You sign up, fill out, all the form online or what have you, and you get 1 free credit. You can use it to get 1 audiobook. You just have to make sure to cancel your membership so that they don't try to charge you after 30 days. But if you do that, you can get a free audiobook. You can get Robert Dvorak's book there. They have it, the whole thing. Quite a few other people that have been on this program. If you're in the audiobooks, if you'd rather read that way, you can go there and take advantage of that. And you can just search online. A lot of the material is available for free in PDF format, audiobook format. Check around. Really use your resources so that we are not funding white people for giving us a few tidbits of their criminal enterprise in terrorizing black people worldwide. Trying to see. I thought there was one more thing I was going to share that Valerie Jackson said that I thought was important to touch on. She definitely said, being a white person, it is not possible to be white and not racist. I can't repeat that enough. And that black people are not capable of being racist. I remember what it was. The sexual abuse. I thought that was one of the most important lines in the book. I'm so glad that I asked her to clarify this sentence. She said, "For as long as power remains high on the agenda of human communication, there will be sexual abuse and rape. As the plane goes overhead, the sentence again: for as long as power remains high on the agenda of human communication, there will be sexual abuse and rape. In my view, and in this context, we talked about this, in this context, power is about domination and control over other people, specifically non-white people. Man, in my view, that gives you a great understanding of all of the sexual deviance, even the promoting of gutter sex, white people and non-white people getting in the bedroom together. As long as white people are interested in dominating and terrorizing non-white people, you are going to see all sorts of sexual debauchery. One of the have-tos, white people are going to encourage and promote it heavily. I would even say, think of it this way: in an environment that is about what they call capitalism, ownership, property, don't want you stealing this, don't want you copying this, copyright infringement, this, that, and the other. We are in an environment where, as the 14-year-old demonstrated, you can easily get your hands on all sorts of pornography for free. Even that right there should be cause for a pause. Why do white people not have a problem allowing everyone in the world, even 14-year-olds, to have free access to pornography? You could be poor, broke, without anything. You'll struggle to get food. You'll struggle to get health care. You'll struggle to get things that you need. But you can have all the access to pornography that you would like. Even that right there should bear some pause for thought and reflection. We will be back tomorrow. Same topic. Prep School Predators. Same topic. 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. You should check that article out, Prep School Predators. It is kind of gross, but I mean, you know, that's the world in which we live. And you should be talking to your children. That's another one. You can get that article, because these children, I think, were like 12, 13, 14. They weren't very old when they were being victimized. So if you have children, you should be pulling these articles and saying, I'm going to make sure that I talk to my child at 9, 8, 7. And frequently, not a one-time conversation, a regular conversation, and pulling some of these articles. The 14-year-old raping a 5-year-old. Talk to your child so they are aware of the world in which we live. It is a dangerous place, particularly if you are black. Context of white supremacy. Context of white supremacy. I will say again, the problem is white people. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for the folks who got me the book. I appreciate it. I hope it was of some constructive value, hearing the material from the book. I like to be prepared. A prayer. Yes, we will do the prayer. We will do the prayer. We will do the prayer. Support cynicalafrican.wordpress.com, TrojanHorse1.com, Reckless 2.0, D-Train, Reckless 2.0, D-Train, Vicus, Outstanding Counter-Racist Information, Cree7.wordpress.com, let's see, Innerstandingisness.wordpress.com, DepressionMyMuse.wordpress.com, Tragic Arrangements, tons of website, EbonyNewsChannel.wordpress.com, EbonyNewsChannel.wordpress.com. My blog, yes, racism-notes.blogspot.com. Thank you, my blog. Yeah, that should be good for today. We'll get everybody else tomorrow if I forgot. If you have a blog on racism and you want to, plug your site, let me know. We'll get the rest of the folks tomorrow. I said we'll do a program where I'll go around and read all of the different blogs. Oh yeah, Kamali Academy. They have a great blog as well. Kamali Academy. Dr. Samori Kamara. Be looking to get them back on the program. Hopefully soon. KamaliAcademy.wordpress.com. KamaliAcademy.wordpress.com. Right on. But yeah, we will do that program. We'll go around and get some of the get a blog post from all the different people that are blogging about racism, white supremacy, to kind of share what they have to do. Do you follow Aryan Nations here on TalkShoe? There are a couple. Oh yeah, I do that. I listen to the white people that are making it plain, right, that they're not using buckets of words. They're just coming out and keeping it real. We don't like these niggers, and white people should be linking up, getting together to do work to maintain our system. Yes, there are a couple programs here on TalkShoe, Aryan Nations. If y'all want to check it out, you can search. It's here on TalkShoe, Aryan Nations. They have a program. I think they tend to come on Saturdays. But yeah, I follow them. I try to listen to their program, SaveWhitePeople.com. They have a program. It's quite a few. I try to go to some of those websites because I feel like you get a more accurate, honest look at what it is to be a white person and what white people are all about. So yes, I do follow them. And with all of the abuse that I have suffered trying to do counter-racist radio programming, I have found it intensely. It reflects the truth. It reflects the truth of the fact that we're on a planet dominated by white terrorism. Now, the people have fussed at me, right, for broadcasting on TalkShoe and saying, well, Gus saying the problem is white people, that's racist, and he's promoting hate speech, and I can't believe TalkShoe allows this, right? And they fussed at me and won't have the cows up on the front page when we're broadcasting live, but they can have programs like Aryan Nations, and there's some others as well. They can have them on the front page of TalkShoe, and I have looked at some of their images because you'll see the graphic that they have up with the program where they will have swastikas up, right? And this will be on the front page. They got another one. It's Commander MCBR, Commander McBride. That's it. Commander McBride Communicates, right? And that's another program here at TalkShoe, and they got a big swastika up as their image. Now, how in the world TalkShoe can be cool with that, and they can put that on the front page. So when you log on to TalkShoe and you're on their front page, you can see an image for Commander McBride. Swastika, red, white, and black. Boldface. Can't miss it. Right at the top of the page. They have no problem putting that up. But Gus T Renegade saying the problem is white people, that's promoting hate speech and racism. Not ironic. Again, it just reflects the truth of what I've been saying. We're on a planet that is dominated by racism, white supremacy, and this is what you should expect. And again, it goes to the core of what it means to be a white person. Yes, I would encourage folks, if you're non-white, check out some of these programs. I'm not saying listen to them all or, spend your whole weekend checking out this material, but just, be aware that white people, quite a few white people, are out and they are talking openly about what their intentions are on this earth, and their intentions are to maintain having their foot on the neck of niggers forever. Be informed. We will be back tomorrow evening, Thursday, July 12th. Tune in. We'll do the prayer. Let's see. Me pull up.
Sorry, Gus, am I being heard?
Oh, yes, sir, we can hear you.
Can I ask for a special request?
Oh, for sure.
Can you do Bookman's Prayer?
Bookman's Prayer. Somebody put it on my Facebook page. Let's see if I can get my hand on it really quick. It might take me a second to get my hand on it. I'm trying to dig it out. I think somebody did put it on my Facebook page pretty recently. All right, I think I got it. Double checking. We'll be on every day, I think, from now until next Tuesday. So we should have lots of material. This looks like an abbreviated version. I think this is clear enough. This might be abbreviated. Well, I'll make sure if there's, I think I might have got the shortened version, so I'll make sure if it's longer, I'll get the full version for next time, but this should make the point. But yeah, we'll be back. We have, I think, programs every day for a while. We'll be on tomorrow. The folks already mentioned Friday. Audiobook, Toni Morrison, The Bluest Eye. That is in my top 5. I think it's one of the best books that I've ever read on racism. I've read it more than 5 times. Every time I read it, I learn something new. I'm just continually amazed at how much it reveals about racism, white supremacy, and anti-blackness. Incredible book. I think everybody should read it at least twice. I'm so thankful I got the audiobook, so I am sharing. You will not have to read to participate in this book club. You can just tune in and listen. It should take, it's not very long, so it shouldn't take more than, 3-4 programs to listen to the whole audiobook. We'll listen to a little bit, comment, listen to a little bit, comment. But that'll be Friday. The call-in is on Saturday. Mr. Fuller will be with us on Sunday. We have 2 programs on next Monday. We have a white woman from the Netherlands. She did a documentary on white armed forces in South Africa. They are out training heavy ammunition, ready to go to war with black people. And racism, white supremacy is war, but they're ready to be spilling blood in the streets, being very clear that they are about armed defense of white people in South Africa. She did a documentary film where she went and watched them train for a few weeks. That'll be Monday, the early program, and then the second program on Monday, Lori Robinson, she'll be with us talking about sexual abuse. And then on Tuesday, Vernelia Randall, black female, will be talking about racism, President Obama, and his healthcare package. Anywho, stay tuned. The prayer, Bookman Duddy's prayer. Good God, who created the sun, which shines on us from above, who rouses the sea and makes the thunder rumble. Listen, God, though hidden in a cloud, watches over us. The God of the white man calls forth crime, but our God wills good works. Our God, who is so good, commands us to vengeance. He will direct our arms and help us. Throw away the likeness of the white man's God, who has so often brought us to tears, and listen to liberty, which speaks in all our hearts. This is the abbreviated version. I will make sure we have the full version for next time. Bookman Duddy during the Haitian Revolution. Context of White Supremacy signing out. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Thank you for listening in.